Everyone loves the classic story of a superhero who has to hide who they really are. We grew up watching Clark Kent with those glasses that fool absolutely no one, or Bruce Wayne pretending to be nothing more than an eccentric billionaire. It's a formula that always works because it makes us think about the sacrifice of giving up a normal life to save the world. But what happens when a young, superpowered alien crashes on Earth and decides to spend 12 years just serving coffee in an attempt to be a normal person? After all, the planet already had its own supreme protector flying around in a red cape. That's exactly the premise of Supergirl. If you think the series is just a female copy of Superman, you couldn't be more wrong. The story goes far beyond that. It carries a tremendous emotional weight, explores complex political conflicts, delivers heartbreaking betrayals, and, of course, packs in a heavy dose of family drama. At its core, it's the journey of a heroine who must learn that her greatest strength doesn't come from shooting lasers out of her eyes, but from finally embracing who she truly is. So today on the channel, Supergirl, the girl who tried to run from her destiny and ended up carrying the weight of the universe on her shoulders.
And I apologize for assuming you did. My name's Deb. I'm from Krypton. And now the world don't move.
Before her world crumbles, a young girl is sent into the stars. Kara Zor-El is given a mission: protect her infant cousin on Earth. But destiny intervenes. A shockwave knocks her ship into the frozen void of the Phantom Zone. Time stands still. When she finally breaks free and crash lands on Earth, Kara is still a child, but her cousin has already become the planet's supreme protector. Sensing that Earth doesn't need another savior, Kara buries her true nature. 12 years pass in the shadows of normalcy. Now an adult, she serves coffee to Cat Grant, a ruthless media mogul in National City. Kara's life is small, ordinary, and suffocating. But beneath the surface, a dormant power begs to be unleashed. That night, a breaking news report changes everything. The flight carrying her adoptive sister, Alex, suffers a catastrophic failure. Kara doesn't hesitate. She streaks across the sky, catching the burning plane and forcing an impossible landing. The world has just discovered a new wonder. However, exposing her light attracts a forgotten darkness. An alien warrior named Vartox begins to hunt her. In the midst of the chaos, Kara is captured by the DO, a secret government agency. The hardest blow comes when she discovers that Alex works for them. The betrayal stings, but Kara's sense of duty prevails. She faces Vartox in brutal combat. Driven to defeat, the alien takes his own life. Before his final breath, he whispers a macabre warning. A much greater threat is on its way. The following morning, a small gift awaits her. Her colleague James Olsen reveals he was sent by Superman and hands Kara the blanket that wrapped her cousin as a baby. The indestructible fabric will become her cape. As the girl finally embraces her destiny, a dark truth lurks in the shadows. Her aunt, General Astra, survived the destruction of Krypton, and the war for Earth has only just begun.
Not even my niece.
Just days after revealing her identity, the weight of heroism begins to crush Kara. The DO relentlessly tests her limits, treating her more like a weapon than an ally. Her drive to prove her worth is fierce, but inexperience carries a high price. Attempting to stop a fire at the harbor, she acts on impulse. A wrong move tears through a tanker's hull, spilling tons of oil into the ocean. The mistake becomes a media-feeding frenzy. Tech mogul Maxwell Lord condemns her on national television, and her own boss, Cat Grant, demands an exclusive interview with the vigilante to control the narrative. All around Kara, doubts multiply. As she grapples with the taste of failure, a deadly alien terrorizes the city, stealing chemical components. The hunt leads her back to the Kryptonian archives and the pain of losing her mother, Allura. Determined not to act alone, Kara seeks refuge with her confidants. Wynn and James form a makeshift support base. With their help, she starts making amends on the streets, but the real danger lurks in the dark. The chemical theft was merely bait. The target was always the young hero. The alien abducts Alex, forcing Kara directly into a trap. Upon arriving at the abandoned warehouse, Kara's blood runs cold. Before her stands the face of her deceased mother, but the voice is harsh and cold. General Astra is alive.
It's been a long time, little one.
The ensuing confrontation rips the warehouse apart. Astra is lethal, revealing the bitterness of being imprisoned by her own sister on Krypton. Fighting desperately, Kara utilizes the brutal techniques she learned from the DEO to survive. Director Hinshaw intervenes at the last second, wounding Astra with a kryptonite blade and forcing the villain to retreat. That night, knowing that public trust requires sacrifice, Kara makes a bold move. She lifts Cat Grant's car and hovers in the air. The feared mogul finally faces her eye to eye, never realizing that the hero she judges so harshly is closer than she ever imagined.
Miss Grant!
The interview with Cat Grant quickly spirals out of control. Pressed by the mogul's razor-sharp questions, Kara makes an irreparable slip. She accidentally confesses her true lineage, confirming she is Superman's cousin.
Start a family. Nobody ever asks my cousin these questions.
Superman is your cousin?
This interview is over.
The secret spreads through the media, and the consequences are immediate. The next morning, the burden of her family name arrives from the sky. The villain Reactron, blinded by a deep-seated hatred for Superman, decides to punish the hero by killing his family. The first street-level attack leaves Kara on her knees, breathless and haunted by a relentless power. The danger is absolute and lethal. Seeking shelter at the DEO, she finds only excuses. Because Reactron is a modified human, the agency refuses to risk exposure and denies her help. Kara realizes she is completely alone in the crossfire. With no other options, she retreats to a hidden office at Catco with Wynn and James. Rejection gives way to a desperate plan. Reactron wastes no time, kidnapping Maxwell Lord and demanding repairs for his failing nuclear suit. The hero tracks the hideout and charges in, but the villain's radiant energy drains her strength. As Kara's consciousness begins to fade into darkness, a thunderclap tears through the ceiling. Superman arrives, saving her from certain death. To the city, it was a miracle. To Kara, it is bitter proof that the world, inside and out, still doesn't see her as self-sufficient. Frustration eats at her. Discovering it was James who signaled her cousin in secret, she harshly pushes him away, determined to prove her worth without the shadow of other heroes. At night, Catco's luxurious magazine launch party is brutally interrupted. Reactron destroys the event's foundations, instigating panic. This time, Kara refuses any rescue. Encasing her hand in molten lead, she braves the deadly radiation. In one precise move, she rips the weakened core from the enemy's chest, saving James and sealing her own victory. The relief, however, lasts only a moment. Later, ready to forgive and open up to James, Kara catches him with Lucy Lane, a living ghost from his romantic past. The shock forces her to retreat, swallowing the rejection in absolute silence. Seconds later, a new siren blares across the city. Her human heart aches intensely, but a hero never has time to bleed. Thanksgiving promises comfort, but family ties can carry their own storms. Kara tries to find normalcy by hosting her adoptive mother, Eliza, while navigating the hidden tensions between her and Alex. Eliza, protective and demanding, secretly blames Alex for allowing her sister to reveal herself to the world as a hero. In communities built on affection, frustration almost always finds a nearby target. At work, the atmosphere is equally turbulent. Shock jock Leslie Willis spreads deliberate hate against Supergirl over the Catco airwaves. Recognizing the importance of the optimism the hero brings, Cat Grant demotes Leslie to the traffic helicopter. This firm decision carries a near-fatal price. During a violent storm, lightning strikes the aircraft. Kara dives from the sky to prevent tragedy, but the energy surges through her body and hits Leslie, leaving the journalist in a coma and awakening a lethal electrical power within her. Kara's festive dinner, planned as a cozy refuge, silently falls apart. When Alex finally confesses she works as a tactical agent, Eliza's disappointment cuts through the air. Tired of seeing her sister carry crushing expectations, Kara confronts her mother's attitude. Moments later, the city goes dark. The newly transformed Livewire invades the corporate building, driven by a thirst for vengeance against Kat. The battle in the empty corridors is perilous and electric. Kat takes the front line of her own survival, distracting the villain with pure courage, so Supergirl can deliver a strategic blow using water mains. The danger ceases momentarily, giving way to brief flashes of peace. Wynn, in a rare moment of vulnerability, confesses that his greatest gratitude is Kara's very presence. However, the family reconciliation carries a dark, revelatory aftertaste. Before returning home, Eliza shares a secret suppressed for years. Alex's biological father died working for that same secret agency. Under the direct command of Hank Henshaw, the ground beneath the sisters' feet vanishes, and a new hunt for the truth is just beginning. Vigilance never sleeps. When Kara destroys a drone mapping her movements over National City, paranoia sets in instantly. While initial suspicions point to her own allies, the tracking leads to a human source: Maxwell Lord's tech complex. Distrust hangs heavy in the air, a reminder that not all predators come from the stars. Meanwhile, Kara attempts to balance her massive responsibilities with the subtleties of ordinary life. She offers to babysit Carter, her absent boss's introspective son, proving that kindness reaches places physical strength never could. In parallel, she encourages James to forgive the past and fight for his romance with Lucy Lane. Swallowing her own feelings becomes a silent sacrifice to ensure a dear friend's happiness. The city's false neutrality is shattered when detonations rock different locations simultaneously. The investigation reveals the perpetrator is Knox, a desperate former employee whose motives remain murky. The target of his masterpiece is a luxury high-speed train during its maiden voyage. The scenario escalates into pure panic when Kara realizes that little Carter slipped away and boarded the same locomotive, dreaming of crossing paths with Supergirl. Duty quickly becomes terrifyingly personal. A violent race against the clock begins. Cornered, Knox reveals his tragic motive: trading the lives of others for the cure for his sick daughter. Shackled by his ruthless choices, the man triggers the final device. Without hesitation, Kara tears the crowded carriage from the jaws of fire, watching with wide eyes as the extremist disappears in the flames of his own explosive. Victory smells of gunpowder and bitterness. Under the cover of night, Supergirl invades Maxwell Lord's penthouse office and exposes the cold truth. All the spilled blood, the calculated destruction, and the manufactured despair were a meticulous test, orchestrated by the billionaire to map the flying vigilante's weaknesses. The line separating cynicism from villainy finally snaps. Stress is a poison that erodes even the most formidable mental defenses. While brusquely intervening in a violent road rage incident, Kara loses control and severely injures an impulsive civilian.
My face, you stupid.
The tactical warning that follows echoes with brutality. Global fear of gods walking the earth doesn't spring from the strength of their fists, but from the terrifying consequences when they decide to stop smiling. The pressure threatens to suffocate her from all sides. In the frenetic newsroom, family tension reverberates with bitter clarity. Kat Grant's rigid mother visits the city, pouring humiliating assessments onto her daughter's shoulders. The open wound drips through the corporate structure, pushing demands onto Kara. Shaken by her recent failures, Kara snaps and explodes in a "enough is enough" outburst, expecting to be thrown back onto the streets. But the moment brings genuine empathy instead of professional ruin. Advised to investigate what is truly bleeding her from the inside, the path to self-discovery proves rocky. In the field, reflections of her inner turmoil clash with raw steel. Military interests unleash the furious red tornado upon the hero, an android designed to withstand calamities. Blinded by her rising rage, Kara breaks the machine's constraints, forcing her metal tormentor to retreat and become an uncontrollable danger to the urban perimeter. Suffocating, Kara seeks refuge in James's honest company in a noisy old garage. Between punches that shatter heavy glass, her soul's armor gives way. The root of her emotional disaster is stripped bare, the sharp, lonely horror of knowing with painful certainty that normal days and simple love may never reach her on the isolated horizon of legends. The confession is harsh, but it drains the venom from her veins. The final showdown against the rogue robot tests her absolute limits. While operatives take down the cruel human architect behind the gears, the battle construct gains a solitary consciousness. Surrender is only achieved when Kara fully releases every ounce of suppressed pain in her soul through a searing heat vision, melting her prey to ash. A false stillness covers the area. Dark investigations point firmly toward a sinister truth. Only Director Henshaw was walking the shadows near the final hours of Alex's father, and in the routine task of cleaning up shards of a simple glass broken on the floor, the unthinkable happens. A sharp pain cuts Kara's skin. Bright, human red blood slowly trickles down her fingers, staining the debris. Her invincible defenses have finally, completely fallen. The silence after the storm is always haunting. After pushing her limits to the extreme, Kara wakes up a prisoner of a mortal body. Her abilities are gone. Kryptonian vigor has given way to human fragility, bringing with it fever, chills, and an unfamiliar exhaustion. Every sneeze is a cruel reminder that the girl of steel can now be bruised and broken. She walks the streets with the same uncertainty as any common citizen, fearing that the power that defined her purpose may never return. The fear of an era's end hangs heavy in the air. Without warning, National City is rocked by a violent earthquake. Buildings tremble, chaos ensues, and panic consumes the crowd. In a desperate reflex to save a life, Kara is shoved to the asphalt by James, resulting in a fractured arm. The physical agony is quickly eclipsed by the profound anguish of feeling useless. She watches, helpless, as news reports condemn the sudden absence of her heroic figure. The weight of the world remains dense and crushing, even when the shoulders carrying it lose their strength. In the dark sublevels of the DEO, a power failure releases Gem, a lethal alien capable of bending the minds of his victims. The facility transforms into a locked labyrinth of horror and suspicion. Alex, tired of the shadows surrounding her father's death, takes advantage of the tension and confronts Director Henshaw at gunpoint. The deadly standoff forces a revelation that can no longer be kept secret. The human mask falls, revealing John Johns, the last surviving son of Mars.
The last son of Mars. My name is Jean.
He is not the Danvers family's executioner, but the soul saved by the patriarch's final sacrifice. An alliance forged through painful truths completely changes the game. Meanwhile, a gas leak brings the corporate building to the brink of total ruin. James risks everything to save innocent employees but slips toward the abyss of a dark elevator shaft. Terror freezes every inch of Kara's spine. On the razor's edge between life and death, pure adrenaline ignites her dormant veins, finally shattering the bonds of her vulnerability. She dives into the thin air and snatches him from the fall in a fraction of a second. But the calm is a treacherous illusion. On the silent flight back home, the sky falls with fury. Aunt Astra and her dark army have finally decided to strike. Blood ties are often the hardest chains to break. Astra emerges with a new, disturbing lethal advantage, devices attached to their suits that block the incapacitating effects of kryptonite. The battle-hardened warrior tries to convince her niece to switch sides, but Kara stands firm, torn between love for her past and loyalty to her new home. The past, however, proves to be a minefield of cruel half-truths. Old memories return to haunt the present, forcing Kara to question everything she believed about those she swore to protect. The moral line separating heroism from extremism begins to blur. In the opulent halls of Catco, executive pressure reaches a nadir of dignity. Cat Grant's confidential emails are leaked to the world, threatening to destroy the empire she built with her own sweat. Behind her impenetrable fortress of scorn, the businesswoman hides a past of irreparable chronic pain, the abandonment and loss of her eldest son. To protect the young man from a relentless media lynch mob, Kat decides to sacrifice her own brilliant career. True love often requires letting go of what we cherish most. Kara's faith suffers a devastating blow when the inescapable truth about her own mother's actions escapes a Kryptonian simulation. The hologram coldly confesses that the naive young girl was used as bait in the distant past to ensure her aunt's imprisonment. The immaculate image of maternal perfection crumbles before tear-filled eyes. Kara weeps quietly as she realizes the war she inherited was built on family manipulations and unforgivable secrets. The pure spirit of a hero bleeds when idols are revealed to have stained hands. With tactical intelligence, Kara's friends expose the true corporate saboteur, sparing the mogul from the planned fall. In a moment of terrifying clarity, Kat looks at her cowering assistant and finally recognizes the features of the girl of steel beneath the cheap frames. There is no longer any safe place to hide in the city. The lonely friendly embrace of the lie soon gives way to the thundering sound of invasion. Trapped in the DEO, Alex and the newly revealed Martian Manhunter realize that Astra's docile surrender was merely a smoke and mirrors gambit. Out of their sight, Non and his starborn squad brutally penetrate Earth's defenses. The alien nightmare has just landed on human soil. The trail of destruction from a battlefield leaves scars far beyond shattered streets. Hank Henshaw is brutally dragged into the violent shadows by Non, leaving secret operations under the hostile, rigid control of General Lane. Without the moral compass of her disguised mentor, Alex walks a tightrope between pure despair and silent insubordination. In parallel, Maxwell Lord builds impenetrable walls against the government, hiding the true extent of the damage under the perfect alibi of corporate espionage. The powerful human raises a dark barricade against gods and men alike, reminding the world that deadly poisons also grow from terrestrial roots. The double life holding Kara's sanity together suffers an inescapable squeeze. In her sunlit domain, Cat Grant tightens the corporate noose, incessantly demanding her failing subordinate confess the celestial secrets behind the glasses under the threat of summary dismissal. The ultimatum suffocates the last drop of normalcy cultivated over years. Unable to withstand the scrutiny of her #1 fan and the excruciating pressure of heroic grief, Kara retreats and hands in her assistant badge. By leaving the glass walls of Catco, she also loses the thin thread connecting her to human warmth. The absolute loneliness at the top of the sky has never felt so cold. Inside the armored underground base, the lines of ethics evaporate in the sharp shadows. Lane decrees that Astra's lethal pride must be broken through cruel injections of pure kryptonite. The prisoner's suffocating screams of agony pierce the corridors and reach the aching heart of her helpless niece. For Kara, empathy doesn't just lie with the friends we cultivate, but in the heroic reluctance to torture those who hurt us. Disobeying lethal commands and betting on the armed compassion of her uniformed comrades, she leads a risky and tense diplomatic exchange, aware that even the tyrants of the galaxies harbor inexplicable loyalties. The tense negotiation pulls the battered Martian from enemy clutches and brings fleeting relief to the pair of rebellious sisters. The peaceful trump card of the unprotected aliens gains form through the director's shape-shifting abilities. Kat is deceived into finally seeing the untouchable goddess standing beside the clumsy Earthling employee, closing the door on unfounded suspicions at the publisher. The regained rest comes with an invisible price of fragile peace. In the secret catacombs of Lord's scientific complex, curious insanity flirts with the macabre. A young blonde test subject, supposedly with a terminal diagnosis, finally breathes on her own, but when she opens her eyelids, dark reflections, filled only with an abysmal black tone, swallow any sign of life. New abominations of science lurk around the corner. The shadow of the past is relentless and always finds a way to collect its debts. Within the cold walls of a maximum security prison, the silence of a cell is broken by the distorted sound of a toy. Winslow Schott imposes his legacy of terror, using lethal traps to pave his way toward freedom and the son he left behind. The news of the escape hits Win like a sentence. He built his life trying to sweep the darkness of his own blood under the rug, but the suffocating presence of federal agents reminds him that, in the eyes of the law, he is just the son of a murderer. Kara tries to be the safe harbor for a friend consumed by paternal rejection and the fear of carrying the same insanity in his veins. In parallel, the lies protecting the government demand risky sacrifices. Haunted by the genocide that decimated his home planet, John refuses to invade human minds using his telepathic abilities. Determined to break the seals of Lord technologies, Alex devises a solitary plan and lures Maxwell Lord into an intimate date. While they dine, the shapeshifted director enters the complex in secret. In the shadows of a cold laboratory, he finds the same black-eyed woman we saw before. But the toy man never plays without a board. Winslow corners Win, forcing his own son to choose between being the executioner of an old enemy in the middle of a crowded convention or being responsible for massive explosions hidden in innocent dolls. The cruel weight of distorted love pushes Win to the brink. Kara's intervention freezes the physical threat at the last second, saving countless lives, but the emotional fracture is cemented in the young man's exposed insecurities. The exhaustion of a tense night finds the sisters comfortable in the false security security of their apartment. They discuss their victories in low voices, feeling protected by the four walls. However, a tiny hidden light in Alex's bag blinks in the dark. Maxwell Lord listens to every confession through his bug, solidifying the target on the sisters' Kryptonian nightmare. The hunt has just changed hands. Old wounds bleed just like new ones. Hatred attracts hatred, and Senator Miranda Crane profits by inflaming crowds with perverse narratives against any and all aliens. The public revulsion she instigates soon grows real teeth. A downtown rally is brutally torn apart by the arrival of a white beastly creature, an impossible threat to predict. Amidst the chaos, a primal fear paralyzes John Jones. The monstrous figure is a white Martian, a member of the exact lethal faction that slaughtered his family beneath the soil of his homeland. The leader of Earth's military forces regresses into the helpless husband of a forgotten life, blinded by a rage that shatters all rational discipline. In the scramble for safety, the shaken senator is whisked away to the sanctuary of the armored agency, seeking refuge in the eye of the storm. However, armed compassion quickly turns the underground base into a claustrophobic slaughterhouse, seamlessly shifting into Crane's form. The creature hunts military agents through the glint of glass reflections. Every deceptive shadow demands loyalty and triggers total panic in the steel corridors, leaving Alex as the necessary decoy in an enigmatic game that fails catastrophically. Navigating a parallel, silent battle, Kara carries purely mortal pains on her back. She stitches together a tense armistice over a fine dinner table between the indomitable Cat Grant and Adam, the son estranged by Cat's selfish past choices. A staggering, cautious step toward love is restored in the city's unyielding heart, letting glimpses of new feelings cross paths with the warrior's own desires. The showdown in the isolation of the desert finally tests the exhausted soul of the exiled alien. Ready to become the monstrous executioner he sees in his morning nightmares, John shackles Kara's divine wrists to bleed his vengeance into the dry earth. It is Kara's gentle, courageous whisper that reminds him that heroes do not absorb the savagery of their enemies. The deadly threat is caged, but the price of heroism exposes a masked vigilance. Away from family relief, a car plunges off a bridge, crushed by the dark force of someone wearing the superheroine's exact face.
Yeah, that is definitely not me.
Human genius often flirts with irreparable cruelty. In the clinical silence of genetic exploration labs, the comatose innocence of a young woman is flooded with a black alien essence. Her body contorts under dark injections designed by Maxwell Lord, meticulously molding her every feature to be the perfect, distorted mirror of the city's true hope. Thus, a manufactured torment is born, focused solely on assassination.
Kill them.
The soaring duplicate shatters the heroic perception of those trying to protect the weak. Worn down by the paradoxes her mantle imposes, the blonde heroine tries to find a tangible illusion by dating Adam, living the flawed reality of a budding romance. But the predatory hunt in the streets demands her presence. She soon realizes that opening the door to common feelings draws violent consequences directly onto the lives of those she tries to hold close. The abrupt breakup grinds one more human chance to dust. The escalation of terror drives Alex to traverse the billionaire's cruel shadows and confront Lord head-on. He shows no vestige of remorse, pointing with sadistic coldness to the mortal fragility he discovered while surveilling the sisters. The offensive in the skies fails catastrophically when lethal tactics genetically assault the prisoner of the air. The shock of green mineral against the clone's skin completely transforms her biology. A fragile appearance shatters, sinking under tragic features of cracked porcelain.
The kryptonite.
Crowned by the hatred embedded in her captor's oppressive brainwashing. Understanding that the weakness is palpable, the monstrosity kidnaps Kara's silent heart. James stares into the dark abyss of the imperfect alien creature's altered eyes, touching a residual purity beneath the darkness for a fleeting moment. In the shadows of that warehouse, the prisoner's empathy exposes his own denied truths. He admits the crushing weight of an unproclaimed love, but sadness and confusion ignite the heat and the scars of the pair. The end does not ring with the vibrant triumph of glory, but as a tragedy postponed by bitter confessions. The test subject falls into a chemically induced slumber. A warm hand soothes the deformed prisoner before an uncertain sleep covers her failing senses for good. Returning to the isolation of her empty apartment, the exhaustion of emotional grief douses necessary defenses. On the ceiling, a parasitic alien flower lurks in silence. Before Kara has the strength to notice, the grotesque form lunges, quickly covering everything as the darkness smothers her against the floor. Illusion is the perfect refuge for a soul shattered by loss. Kara awakens disoriented only to find her mother's serene face and the dusty glow of Krypton beneath a dark red sun. The impossible materializes before her eyes, promising the warm peace that Earth constantly denies her. But the tranquility is a lie cultivated by the Black Mercy, a lethal alien parasite silently draining the life from her chest. Outside the trance, panic seizes those left behind. James and Wynn break into the silent apartment to find the heroine stretched out on the brink of death. The frantic race to save her life transfers the paralyzing anguish to the cold corridors of the DEO. Removing it by force would cause a lethal heart attack, and the ticking clock pushes Alex into the abyss of her own practical despair. To protect the integrity of Supergirl's secret identity, John takes her physical form and suffers at the demanding hands of Cat Grant. The disguise carries a humiliating price. In the shadows of the military lab, a desperate solution is brought to life by Max's ego, opening a dangerous virtual reality door for Alex to dive into her sister's corrupted mind. In the heart of the Kryptonian fantasy, Alex's fierce interference begins to crack Kara's perfect world. Abandoning the dream demands an excruciating sacrifice. Kara tearfully confesses her desperate attachment to that impossible life, but finally accepts the scars of the real world, regaining her senses locked deep within her soul. The comfort of waking turns into pure hatred. Fury over the cruel manipulation hurls Kara into the skies to hunt Non without a shred of mercy. Away from the thundering impact in the sky, a fatal sacrifice stains the hands of one who swore only to protect the human homeland. Astra nearly executes John on the edge of a building, and in the tragic beat of a torn sigh, Alex pierces the alien warrior's chest to the death. In the cold rubble of goodbyes, John takes the merciless burden of the spilled blood upon himself. He confesses to the false murder to Kara, sealing the terrible sin to spare Alex's soul. At night, surrounded by food and the innocent laughter of her friends, the Maiden of Might finally discovers that true family anchors are built by protectors willing to suffer just to see her smile once more. Grief dictates painful funeral pauses even in the midst of undeclared wars. Beneath the calm stars of National City, Non descends with formal solemnity to demand Kara's presence at Astra's funeral. A forced 2-week peace treaty paralyzes the imminent threat of Myriad. Isolated under a shroud of sadness, Kara nurtures a repulsion for John, completely unaware of who actually stained their hands with her blood relative's tragic end. The routine within the mirrored corporate towers crushes weakness. The acidic arrival of the new assistant, Siobhan Smythe, establishes a hostile environment ready to crush kindness under the high heels of blind ambition. Sensing vulnerabilities with predatory ease, Siobhan pokes at the quiet romantic failures involving James and Kara's silent loneliness. Emotional fissures expose old wounds that ache in the dark. Behind lifeless lit alleys, echoes of alien carnage stain heavy chains. The master jailer, cruelly camouflaged as a regular human police officer, hunts renegade survivors of the intergalactic prison through the streets, mercilessly executing them with a guillotine torture device. To this pitiless ghost, justice is nothing but extermination. When Kara crosses his path to defend the weak, the brutal trap shatters her heroism within the glowing red ceiling of a cell drowned in pure mortality. Without a spark of invulnerability in her crushed body, the heroine's exposed heart is her only weapon. Condemned to wait out the cold clock alongside the smuggler Luzano, Kara pleads for the salvation of men redeemed by new love. At the relentless moment the axe nears his dry eyes, precise shots from Alex's tactical team shatter the frame of the cage. Yellow light floods in, fueling the liberating beats of the broken lead and tearing the metallic nightmare in half. Freedom returns to cloudy paths. Max steps back into the sunlight, shielded by the suffocating threat of kept secrets. In the cavernous silence of the inert holographic computers of her mother's AI, Kara begs for answers from forgotten shadows in a harrowing tone, coldly disconnecting herself one step at a time from those rushing to sweep the terrifying screams of tomorrow's retaliation under the rug. The clock of forgiveness drags slowly where the soul has been stabbed by the sharp claws of a persistent lie. Cold toward toward the secret facilities and refusing to actively participate in operational rescues with John. The heroine deserts into her own impenetrable revolt. Grudges shatter entire teams with the same cutting ferocity as wars fought by silent kingdoms isolated among skyscrapers. The forced hiatus slides into complete terror when encrypted curses devour national cities' financial core, seizing control of roadways with dead signals and machines crushing innocence. The sadistic cyber attack materializes the smiling wrath of Indigo, an untouchable virtual descendant focused solely on generalized annihilation. To usurp a paradise free from the crawling footsteps of human fragility, people race against an enemy inside the marrow of the blind network of inactive secret nuclear warheads, now in the lethal crosshairs. Away from government weapons and engulfed by bruised pride within the sacred mantle of the Fortress of Solitude, Kara dives for answers alongside James's questioning presence. Digital records burst with a cold revelation. It was Indigo who, from the deep routes of space, hijacked the Red Sun's fragility, violently pushing the hellish prison tethered to Kara toward the forgotten crust of the inhabited world. A terrible epiphany plunges them back into mortal responsibility. Against the growing darkness in the sky, a nuclear roar abruptly rends the clouds of the captured military coast. The lethal pulse of the missile fired toward the hearts of an entire city ignores muscular negotiations or the melting of Kara's hot skin, as she strains every millimeter of the indestructible craft by hand. Only by allowing her hatred-etched suspicions to crumble does she yield to the vulnerability of choked trust. Guided by the steady pragmatism of John's voice over static transmitters, complex shutdown codes sink the lead nightmare beneath the silent mirror of the Pacific Ocean. Honest boundaries demand painful worldly resignations behind closed doors. Glances of heartbreak tear through forgotten vows and promises as Lucy burns her romantic bridges, unmasking the silent blindness for Kara locked within Olsen's inoperative guard. Stripped bare by the sacrifices of saving others, Kara is blindsided by the visceral truths thrown at her by Alex's sobbing breakdown. The blade that executed her own family bleeds a poignant forgiveness. Holding hands to rebuild alliances in the blinding clarity of salvation, outside, a dark robotic sphere silently gathers metallic parts, refortifying lethal ashes in the gloom of the blue dawn. In the shadow of a city still trying to understand its heroes, every choice carries an invisible weight. Kara has always tried to be the light, but even the brightest stars can be eclipsed. After a seemingly routine rescue, something silent infiltrates her system. A fragment of red kryptonite hidden beneath the rubble alters the very essence of who she is. Gradually, kindness gives way to arrogance. The compassionate heroine is replaced by a cold, implacable figure. In the corporate world, the change is subtle but destructive. She ruthlessly exposes secrets and ensures that those who cross her, like the ambitious Siobhan, lose everything. Silent pride soon transforms into open cruelty. For Kara, empathy becomes an unwanted anchor. The true rupture occurs away from the eyes of the press. Resentment repressed through years of sacrifice explodes into fury. She dons the colors of those she once swore to fight. As night falls, the inevitable confrontation spans the skies. Sharp words cut deeper than any physical blow. Alex desperately tries to reach her sister's soul but finds only rage and uncontrolled power. Salvation requires a bitter sacrifice. To stop Kara from destroying the only family she has left, John Johns reveals his true form, exposing himself to the world to protect those he loves. This painful distraction allows an antidote to reach Kara's bloodstream and contain the invisible threat. The awakening is brutal. The intoxicating power vanishes, leaving only the metallic taste of guilt and the tears of devastating regret. She is no longer in control of her mortal weaknesses. The city watches her with fear, and a trust once unshakable now lies in pieces on the ground. The road to redemption will be long, lonely, and tortuous. Trust is a fragile currency in times of crisis. While the city still looks to the sky with palpable dread, the doors of the government refuge are breached by military forces. John Johns is now a prisoner in his own base, cornered by investigators who cannot see the loyalty behind his Martian form. Confined and stripped of his powers, John reveals a past stained with blood. He tells the story of a distant sacrifice, the moment Jeremiah Danvers gave his own life to protect a refugee from another world. A promise forged in death has guided John's every action since. But in cold interrogation rooms, the truth rarely finds ears willing to listen. The persecution does not spare the remaining family. Alex faces polygraphs and relentless suspicion. The verdict is heartless, and she becomes a captive of the system system she swore to serve, condemned to vanish into the shadows of a clandestine lab, feared even by the greatest legends. The clock ticks fast against hope. Faced with imminent loss, despair pushes Kara toward absolute vulnerability. She removes the invisible mask of her double life before those who hunt her kind. Recounting her years of isolation and the latent pain of hiding her true self becomes the final tool to forge an unlikely alliance. Honesty breaks barriers that weapons never could. Night swallows the military convoy in a precise ambush. John and Alex are freed from the chains of human tyranny, but the echo of a stolen memory delivers a paralyzing secret. Jeremiah Danvers is still breathing. The brutal shock of the past brings a somber purpose, forcing Alex and John to flee together into the darkness. Far away, resentment fuels tragedy. Siobhan, consumed by failure, falls toward her death, only to discover that her hatred has a voice of its own. A deafening scream rips through the concrete, announcing that new demons are only beginning to wake. Hatred is a poison that knows no borders. Haunted by an ancestral curse and fueled by a visceral desire for revenge, Siobhan embraces the growing darkness in her soul. She finds a perfect ally in the living, furious electricity of Livewire. Together, they conspire to rip the heart out of those they hold responsible for their ruin. Help arrives like a lightning bolt from unknown skies. A lost speedster, crossing the barriers of the multiverse, crosses paths with the heroine. This alliance brings a breath of hope, but battles teach that haste often carries a high price. Brute force and impatient charges against the villains result in deep pain and inevitable retreats. True resistance is not shown with unbreakable fists, but with silent sacrifices. When innocent voices cry for help in a terrorized plaza, Kara throws herself directly into a lethal current of electricity. Every lightning bolt that strikes her body is a voluntary punishment to protect those who cannot fight. She collapses to the ground, fractured and weak. The miracle does not happen through grand powers, but through fragile humanity. Ordinary citizens and unarmed firefighters form a protective shield to defend the one who bled for them. The unanimous forgiveness of a city seals the defeat of the uncontrolled fury, and silently, powerfully, restores the crown to its guardian. With alliances honored and high-speed goodbyes, National City's horizon finally seems peaceful. A gentle touch and a romantic promise light up the night after bitter times. However, peace is a thin fabric that tears easily. Smiles are instantly replaced by perfectly vacant stares. Control escapes thousands of minds simultaneously as a coordinated march of paralyzed bodies takes over the entire metropolis. Without warnings or bloody confrontations, supreme mental dominance is activated, and humanity is silenced, devoured alive by the nightmare of an uncontrollable force. National City plunges into absolute silence. The mind control protocol known as Myriad enslaves millions, turning ordinary citizens and even the mighty Superman into empty puppets. At the DEO, Non forces a hypnotized Lucy Lane to release dangerous prisoners. Kara intervenes with brutal force, fighting through the chaos to protect the facility. The victory is short-lived as she soon discovers a terrifying truth transmitted by an echo from the past. Myriad cannot be deactivated. The weight of an entire city now rests upon her shoulders. In the heart of the metropolis, the nightmare becomes intensely personal. Non orchestrates a cruel display of power, forcing Catco employees to leap to their deaths. Kara dives desperately, saving Wynn and James, but watches helplessly as an innocent woman plunges toward the concrete. Even amidst grief, she finds unexpected alliances. Protected by containment technology, Maxwell Lord and Cat Grant stand as the final bastions of human resistance. The line between hero and enemy begins to blur. Far away, John and Alex seek refuge at Eliza Danvers' home, bringing the flames of truth. Jeremiah is still alive, but guilt and duty push them back into the war zone. Their return is immediately punished with violence. The ruthless Indigo ambushes them, nearly crushing the life out of Alex until John surrenders, his body collapsing in a feigned death. True resistance is not shown only with fists, but with silent sacrifices. Extreme times breed deadly measures. Maxwell proposes a kryptonite bomb, willing to sacrifice innocent lives to extirpate the alien threat. Kara refuses to let fear dictate survival. Touching Maxwell's buried humanity, she convinces him to create a counter-signal based on hope. But just as they prepare to transmit, the ground gives way. Alex emerges from the shadows, clad in kryptonite-lined armor, her mind completely dominated by Non. Sisters are forced into a mortal combat where love is transformed into the ultimate weapon. The confrontation is brutal and pitiless. Under Myriad's dark command, Alex attacks without hesitation, her kryptonite blade cutting deep into Kara's flesh. Just as the fatal blow nears, John and Eliza arrive. Eliza's desperate, tearful plea cuts through the alien programming, reminding Alex of the belief her father had in her unshakable strength. The sacred bond of family shatters the mental grip. A thread of hope appears, small but powerful. Seizing this momentum, Kara transmits her message of light across every screen in National City. The frequency breaks Myriad's invisible chains, awakening the citizens from their silent nightmare. But the initial defeat only infuriates the enemy. Realizing they can no longer control humanity, Non and Indigo decide to eradicate it. They convert Myriad's expansive signal into a lethal pulse. The stakes are no longer about dominion, they are about pure survival. Knowing the chances of return are slim, Kara says a silent goodbye to the people she loves, entrusting her mother's necklace to Alex's protection.
Keep it safe for me.
The battlefield shifts to the Nevada desert, where the Fort Ross prison powers the execution machine. War collides in the sand. John tears Indigo apart with visceral fury, while Kara overpowers Non in a blinding clash of heat vision. However, Indigo's dying breath locks the ship's controls, leaving only one maddening way out. Kara must push a million-ton prison into the relentless void of space. She embraces the sacrifice, losing consciousness as the frigid cold consumes her, only to be rescued at the last second by Alex's courage and an ancient escape pod. With the skies clear, National City breathes again. John receives a presidential pardon, and Kara finds new purpose in Cat Grant's approval. But peace always extracts its toll. During a family toast, a roar tears through the night. Kara opens a newly fallen Kryptonian pod, her breath catching at the shocking secret resting inside. The crashed pod holds a comatose alien shrouded in mystery, immune to all earthly instruments. Kara and John transfer the silent survivor to the imposing new DEO headquarters, but questions far outweigh the answers. Meanwhile, ordinary life proves equally complex. Kara hesitates to define her professional path and pulls back from her emerging feelings for James. Old habits die hard. A tactical fear of change paralyzes her, grounding her flight before it even begins. The momentary peace is shattered when the commercial spacecraft Venture plummets from the skies on a disastrous course. Kara rushes to intervene, joined quickly by the legendary Superman. Together, they shoulder the weight of the imminent disaster, but their reunion exposes unhealed wounds. Clark's arrival at the DEO brings a storm of resentment toward John, born from the discovery that the agency maintains a hidden arsenal of lethal kryptonite. Conflicting ideologies on how to protect the Earth create deep fissures between the old allies. The Venture's trail of destruction points to heiress Lena Luthor, who was supposed to be on the flight. Desperate to wash away her family's blood-soaked history, Lena becomes the primary target of John Corbin, an international assassin commanding militarized drones. While Clark is blinded by the sins of the Luthor clan, Kara chooses to believe in Lena's intentions. The conflict explodes during a ceremony intended to redeem the corporation. Amidst the chaos of explosions and dust, Lena fires a weapon to protect Alex, proving that her salvation will also require dark deeds.
And there's nothing you can do.
In the painful calm of the following day, Kara finally takes the reins of her own life. She renounces her romance with James, accepting solitude to embrace her destiny as a reporter, ready to confront the shadows with the truth. Clark extends his stay, seeking to anchor his existence in the family he has left. However, in the hidden depths of the city, the defeated take on new forms. Corbin's broken body is absorbed by the cold hands of Project Cadmus. A machine is activated, and from his mortal ashes, an aberration of metal and fury awakens for the first time.
Metallo.
In the wake of recent chaos, a partnership of legends takes to the skies. Kara and Clark fight side by side, inspiring National City with palpable hope. But in hidden facilities, John Corbin awakens as Metallo, a machine powered by kryptonite and designed to subjugate the world through fear. As the metallic threat grows, human life takes its toll. At Catco, Kara faces her new and relentless boss, Snapper Carr, who crushes any illusion of an easy life in the newsroom. The weight of the real world increases when Cat Grant decides to step away, leaving Kara without her greatest mentor. The fear of change haunts the young reporter once again, but grief must wait. Metallo's first strike is brutal. He takes down Superman and severely injures Supergirl, forcing a painful retreat. The defeat exposes open wounds within the DEO, revealing that the kryptonite plague was stolen by treacherous hands inside the agency. The hostility between Clark and John reaches a breaking point. In small communities or military bases, a breach of trust often condemns everyone. In the eye of the storm, family bonds are tested. Alex finally confesses her fear of being left behind with Clark's continuous presence. This vulnerability sparks a fierce determination in Kara to protect the one who has always protected her. The final war is fought on two fronts. Donning untested anti-radiation suits, the Kryptonian heroes collide with two lethal versions of Metallo. Victory is not born of invulnerability, but of the sacrifice of allies. Alex dons heavy mechanical armor, delivering the decisive blow to the monster's heart. In Metropolis, John removes the poisoned core from the second assassin. Peace returns briefly, and Clark departs, taking all the kryptonite with him and leaving behind a silent pact of trust. However, safety is a mere illusion within the medical bays. Kara watches the silent alien survivor rest. Suddenly, his eyes snap open, and with blind fury, the stranger's cold hands close around the heroine's throat. The air in the DEO corridors is heavy with the fury of a frightened prisoner. The alien immobilizes Kara, crushes guards in his path, and dives through the window into the city's shadows. The hunt has barely begun before the skies demand new attention. The president lands to sign the historic Alien Amnesty Act, a landmark of compassion. But optimism collapses when violent flames erupt on the tarmac, targeting the leader's life. Suspicion quickly falls on the fugitive. The fierce search throws Alex into the National City underworld, where her path crosses with Detective Maggie Sawyer. In a clandestine bar designed as a safe haven for non-human beings, Alex's defenses begin to crack. She discovers that the fear of persecution drowns out any chance of peace for those just trying to live. Meanwhile, Kara enters an ideological collision course with Lena Luthor. The ambitious heiress creates a detector capable of exposing hidden alien lives, justifying her innovation under false pretenses of security. The dilemma weighs on Kara's soul. The search for human truth often requires sacrificing old certainties. The military hunt reaches its climax, and Kara collides with the fugitive invader. Amidst punches and destruction, the truth emerges. His name is Mon-El, and he is not from Krypton, but from Daxam, a world forged on despicable ideals with a long history of diplomatic bloodshed with Kara's people. Compassion fails, old prejudices surface, poisoning any attempt to help, but the true assassin still walks free. A being forged in fire attacks the presidential ceremony with destructive rage, kidnapping Maggie in the chaos. Supergirl and Alex descend ruthlessly upon the Infernian creature, using Arctic storms and heavy fists to choke out the flames. They tear the detective from the shadows of her own execution. As the dust of battle settles, regret takes hold. Kara returns to the confines of the cell and apologizes to Mon-El, lowering her guard before the last son of a dead world. John also finds his own miracle in a dive bar. Magan, an authentic green Martian, a living breath from an annihilated past.
My name is Magan Moores. I'm the last daughter of Mars.
However, a fragile victory hides silent deceptions. Walking through the halls of power, the president's face ripples unnaturally, hiding alien claws beneath human robes. In the crushing silence of the DEO, memories of a world in flames haunt Mon-El's mind. In the ashes of Daxam's fall, his escape was bought at the deliberate cost of a young prince's life. The weight of this invisible guilt anchors his stay on Earth, while Kara tries exhaustively to guide him toward heroism. But goodness is not easily inherited. Away from military training, brutal deaths expose horrors in the sewers of society. Torn bodies lead Alex and Maggie to the gates of hell, an underground fight club for the human elite. In the blood-stained arena, the desperate kill for a few coins and blind applause. The spectacle of misery guarantees unlimited gold for Veronica Sinclair, the untouchable queen of crime known as Roulette. The horror hits its deepest point when Alex and Maggie see the arena. Magan, the new and rare spark in John's lost life, is brawling in the center of the ring. The Martians' cold refusal to abandon the barbarity shatters John's foundation. For her, the daily fight is not for honor or glory. It is a self-imposed sentence for the tragedy of still breathing. This spiral of pain becomes a death trap under Roulette's mercenary claws. Kidnapped, John is thrown under the spotlights, forced to fight to his last breath against Magan's fragmented mind. Green monstrosities erupt under the raw light of the bets, but the Martian bond cries louder than the imposed fury. Neither dares to sever the sacred thread of life. The shrill sound of rescue cuts through the deathly tension. Supergirl tears through the darkness, facing furious gladiators while police lights dismantle the underworld. Though victorious in combat, the true loss emerges in silence. Impunity floats in the bureaucratic air, freeing Roulette in the freezing dawn due to the pure weaknesses of the human system. Compassion blooms in the ashes of fear. John visits Magan in her cold apartment and extends a sincere apology, offering his soul as a constant anchor. He leaves, promising she is no longer alone. As the door clicks shut, a darker terror is reborn. The green skin melts, Magan's features collapse, and soulless red eyes pierce the mirror of lies. A white Martian sleeps under the roof of trust. Kara's attempt to mold Mon-El into a normal human life at Catco quickly becomes a challenge. She struggles to teach him how to hide his powers and live stealthily, but his adaptation is flawed. The weight of duty is not something that can be forced onto another's shoulders. On the streets, physical danger intensifies suddenly. Common criminals wield lethal alien weapons, spreading uncontrollable devastation throughout the city. James, exhausted by his own inefficiency in the face of criminal barbarity, decides he can no longer be just a reporter or a spectator. The desire to make a tangible difference drives him to act from the shadows, taking on thugs with his bare hands. For him, backing down is no longer an option. While National City deals with the violent ballistic threat, Alex fights a painful internal battle. Her repressed feelings for Maggie become too loud to be silenced. The vulnerability of admitting who she really is terrifies her deeply. Her attempts to reach out end in panic and uncertain retreats, proving that self-acceptance requires extreme courage. At a charity ball hosted by Lena Luthor, the armed gang attacks the guests without hesitation. Supergirl joins the fray immediately, but it is Wynn and Lena's quick thinking that destroys the weaponry at the critical moment. The victory saves countless lives and brings drastic consequences. James, intoxicated by the silent glory of protecting the weak, convinces Wynn to forge a suit of combat armor. A new warrior awakens. In a moment of rare bravery in the darkness of a bar, Alex finally finds the strength to face Maggie. The words trapped for years in her throat escape for the first time. Honesty becomes her greatest armor. In oppressive secrecy, the mind behind the chaos watches patiently. The unshakable woman distributing alien fury through the streets is none other than Lillian Luthor, a leader willing to burn any horizon to sweep the cosmic beings from her planet. The millennial ice of the Arctic hides abominations that humanity was never meant to face. When scientist Rudy Jones is infected by the remains of a fossilized wolf, an insatiable hunger consumes his body and usurps his sanity. He becomes a parasitic creature, condemned to steal energy from innocent victims to sustain his own miserable existence. Far from bodily monstrosities, a much more intimate storm suffocates Alex. The weight of keeping her greatest truth finally destroys her barriers. In a state of pure fragility, she admits to Kara that she's attracted to women, fearing rejection and blind judgment. The silent despair gives way to a smile of compassion and deep embraces from a loyal sister. In the grimy shadows of National City, Supergirl catches Mon-El crushing opponents for money, failing once again to learn any worthy virtue. Heroism is a language he refuses to speak. However, true terror arises when the uncontrollable parasite attacks the city center without mercy. The beast brutally consumes the life force of Supergirl and John Johns, dragging both into the darkness of near death. To save the lone Martian's life, Magan gives a part of herself. She ignores deep racial fears and offers her own blood for the transfusion. To her, shed blood does not discriminate against peace, but the consequences may be far more lethal than death itself. In the heat of urban flames, a new protector covered in metal plates emerges from the rubble. James fully assumes the identity of Guardian, protecting innocence with his own chest.
Who are you? Guardian.
In a kamikaze act of survival, Supergirl infuses the parasite with radioactive energy until its toxic stomach collapses for good. The physical relief, however, is overshadowed by a cutting rejection. Encouraged by her own romantic intuition, Alex risks her heart and kisses Maggie, only to find a sharp rebuff in return. Emotional grief invades her night under familiar shoulders. While tears wash the wounds in the living room, Cadmus's tactical fangs silently drag Mon-El through the cold streets straight to the underground base. Behind heavy, impenetrable technological bars, Mon-El experiences for the first time the cold and meticulous tyranny of the Cadmus organization. Intergalactic hatred fuels the violent command of Lillian Luthor, who manipulates people like disposable puppets to achieve the human purity she so craves. Inside the once secure corridors of the DEO, M'Gann's sacrifice exacts a maddening toll. Devastating hallucinations drown John's healing thoughts, conjuring ghosts of his own carbonized species. When the toxin in his body demands the absolute truth, John extracts the great secret. Learning that his savior belongs to the horde of white Martians drives an unmovable stake through his moral convictions. Blinded by the perpetual genocide of his loved ones, he beats the spy with ancestral brutality. M'Gann does not dare to strike back, accepting her final fate bound in the containment chains of the agency she protected. In the dark trenches, the Guardian's shining mantle is shrouded in a devious conspiracy of judicial murders. James is publicly framed for bloodshed he did not commit. Cowardly refusing the option of forced flight, he dives into the cruelest alleys, facing thirsty swindlers to reclaim his honor and purge the innocent accused from oblivion. Despair dictates Kara's fatal step into the trap set by Cadmus. Expecting Mon-El's release, Supergirl runs head-on into the bionic skeleton of the cybernetic incarnation of Hank Henshaw. The false general physically subjugates her and chains her in the sadistic facility. Lillian Luthor pulls the trigger without hesitation, riddling Mon-El's defenseless flank with bullets just to force Kara to expend every trace of her vital energy through an uninterrupted solar flare. The Silver Needles advance, harvesting her red blood, now stripped of its lethal, impenetrable deflectors. Emerging from the most hostile shadows like a familiar miracle, Jeremiah Danvers annihilates his own freedom to restore Kara and Mon-El's breath, disappearing once more into the torment of a dark dungeon to enable their escape route. Though the Guardian is cleared of his infamous crimes in the night breeze and pizzas are shared over the wounds of the living, M'Gann's final warning permanently pierces the basement's iron optimism. The white mutation is irrevocably germinating within John's genetic code. The infiltrated enemy, now with Kryptonian vials in bloodied hands, uses the innate genetic key to unlock the sacred and protected heart of the frozen fortress of solitude. The routine of fighting crime on the streets no longer fills the void in Kara's chest. When she and the Guardian stop another violent robbery, the triumph feels hollow and mechanical. She confesses her deep frustration to Alex, masking the true weight of feeling stagnant as a hero. But a desperate plea changes everything. A mother begs for help on the news to find her missing daughter, Izzy. That woman's gaze ignites a long dormant purpose. The investigation leads her to a clandestine blood testing clinic, with Mon-El following in her footsteps against his will. What seemed like a local kidnapping reveals itself as a colossal trap. They are sucked through a technological portal and hurled into the dusty atmosphere of Maldoria, the epicenter of the universe's slave trade. Under the oppressive light of a scarlet-red sun, Kara's invincible strength vanishes completely. She is now as vulnerable and fragile as the people she came to save. On Earth, panic takes over the DEO. Alex reluctantly mobilizes a rescue team, fighting an internal battle between duty and the terror of losing her sister forever. Meanwhile, in the alien dungeons, Kara discovers that it was Roulette who orchestrated the sale of the humans. Without her powers, Supergirl uses the only weapon she has left: unwavering courage. She throws herself into the front lines, absorbing physical abuse to protect the captives. Her sacrifice awakens the fury and hope of the prisoners. The rebellion explodes in the cells just as Alex's rescue team crosses the portal. Chaos dominates the fortress, but unity forces an escape. Back in the safety of Earth, the impact of the mission resonates deeply.
I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have listened to you.
Maggie finally connects the dots and discovers Supergirl's dual identity, forcing Alex to be completely honest about her life. Monel is also touched by Kara's boundless bravery and decides to follow the heroic path. But in the dusty shadows of Maldoria, hooded hunters inspect the carnage, searching for the whereabouts of the lost heir of Daxam. The weight of the past corrodes Magan's mind in the silence of her cell. With no apparent physical injuries, her consciousness simply fades, dragging her quickly into an irreversible coma. John knows the only cure is a dangerous Martian mind meld, but ancestral hatred paralyzes him. Forgiving the race that exterminated his family and carbonized his daughter seems an intolerable price, even to spare a life. Away from the lab, urban chaos resurfaces in the form of pure electricity. Short circuits herald the violent escape of the villainous live wire. When Kara tries to stop her, she is surprised by lethal electrical duplicates and suffers a merciless attack. The Guardian intervenes in the crossfire to save her but is seriously injured by the shock. Removing the metal from the vigilante's helmet, Kara discovers, terrified, the face of James Olsen. Deception coupled with fear causes her to confront him harshly. Heroism is a deadly burden, and she refuses to have James's blood on her hands. In the DO basement, compassion tears out the roots of resentment. John dives into Magan's collapsing mind and witnesses the naked truth. He sees the exact moment she betrayed her own bloodthirsty people to save a small green Martian boy. In that ethereal and healing space, John no longer sees a monster, but a wounded soul crying out for redemption. He offers forgiveness, pulling her back into the light. Meanwhile, Kara discovers that the true live wire is merely the tortured guinea pig of an unscrupulous human scientist. When James and Monel are captured during the rescue, the Girl of Steel changes the moral rules of the game. She frees her old enemy and appeals to the villain's distorted sense of justice, sealing a dangerous pact of mercy. The scientist survives the electrical wrath, and Kara finally accepts that her friends' destinies belong to them. Monel finds his own worth and confesses his hidden romantic feelings. The calm, however, collapses instantly. Magan awakens with a warning that chills the room. The relentless white Martians have just discovered her location. Celebrations often mask open wounds in the soul. On the 13th anniversary of Kara's arrival on Earth, the apparent joy crumbles when Alex cancels her attendance. Feeling abandoned, Kara sinks into a silent loneliness, fleeing the truths her own heart is reluctant to accept regarding Monel. But a violent universe allows no reprieve for mundane anxieties. Armek, Magan's despotic former partner, resurfaces from the shadows with a brutal ultimatum. He demands the traitor's complete surrender. Otherwise, the blood of her friends will drown the city. Refusing to back down, she is sheltered by John in the DEO's lead-lined vaults. The apparent protection of lead shatters when two identical versions of Magan collide violently in the corridors. The enemy predator isn't attacking the walls, he is already breathing inside them. Paranoia immediately infects the elite agents. With the White Martian's unsurpassed telepathic and shape-shifting abilities, any familiar face could hide the gleam of an assassin. The containment gates drop, turning the government agency into a suffocating pit. With no reliable radar, John invokes the instinctive alien phobia of fire to force the intruder to reveal his gray skin. When the flames get close, the bloody farce falls apart. Wynn's sweet face hides the genocidal monster. True dread hits John when he finds Alex and the real Wynn gagged on the ceiling moments later. Two demons have invaded the fort silently, and one of them wears the features of the woman Kara loves most in the universe. As the building's nuclear reactor core is reprogrammed for an unavoidable lethal meltdown, war explodes in the subterranean wings. Kara faces the implacable fists of the creature mimicking her sister, resisting the psychological torture of the fraternal image. On the other side of the plant, Magan brutally destroys Armek, embracing the ferocity of her ancestral lineage to save her newly discovered Terran family. In the sunny days following the wreckage, the smoke clears the lies. Alex confronts her sister, showing that all the abandonment she felt was a wall built to hide her repressed passion for Monel. Finally armed with the courage to seek the man she learned to love, Kara finds him on a date with someone else. Time always exacts a non-negotiable price for the hesitations of the heart. The weight of the past rarely forgives those who bear the name Luther. 20 years ago, a young Lena entered a cold mansion only to find unexpected refuge on the chess chessboard of her adoptive brother, Lex. Today, that same shadow threatens to consume her. In a rowdy bar, life goes on. Alex finally introduces Maggie as her girlfriend to their friends. A small moment of warmth in a world of constant hostility. But at another table, trust begins to crack. Kara defends Lena's integrity against Lillian's looming judgment, providing unwavering support to her friend. James, however, sees only the inherent poison of the villainous bloodline. To him, blood always dictates destiny. Believing redemption is possible, Kara encourages Lena to visit her mother in prison. The meeting reopens old wounds. Lillian confesses a bitter truth. Lena is the product of her late husband's affair. The matriarch exploits her daughter's vulnerability to plead for forgiveness. Lies are the sharpest tools in captivity. In the courtroom, chaos erupts. John Corbin, powered by a smuggled kryptonite heart, destroys the room and frees Lillian. The destruction takes an immediate toll, forcing Kara to save innocent bystanders trapped under a fallen crane instead of capturing the fugitives. Shortly after, forged security footage accuses Lena of orchestrating the escape and stealing the lethal mineral. Maggie arrests her without hesitation, and even her editorial colleagues condemn her before an official verdict is reached. The world rejects her instantly, but Kara remains relentless in her loyalty. The true culprit behind the theft is eventually revealed by DEO technology. Henshaw was responsible for sabotaging the cameras. Far from the eyes of the law, in the isolated mountains, Lillian forces Lena to open Lex's old secret vault, coveting weapons designed to subjugate gods. When Supergirl finally arrives to stop the looting, the battle is brutal. Corbin's artificial heart overloads, turning his body into an unstable bomb. John intervenes in the skies at the last second, and Kara rescues Lena moments before the final explosion. The following day, silent regrets fill the halls of Catco. James asks Kara for forgiveness, mending the ties frayed by suspicion. In the solitude of her victorious office, Lena stares at a chessboard, waiting for invisible moves. That same night, emotional shields finally fall. Monel admits his jealousy to Kara, and the distance between them vanishes. A long-awaited kiss hangs in the air, but the universe has its own relentless timing. A mystic portal tears through the living room, spitting out an eccentric visitor who calls himself Mr. Mick Spitlick, fiercely demands Kara's hand in marriage. When Monel attempts to remove him through brute force, the invader telepathically banishes him to the DEO cells with a snap of his fingers. Kara's verbal refusal only instigates the creature's perverse obsession. He vanishes suddenly, leaving a silent threat in the air. In the government refuge, Monel advocates for absolute armed retaliation against intruders wielding such spells. Kara rejects the bloody politics of fallen worlds and demands strategic pacifism. Meanwhile, emotional desperation infects the base itself. Alex struggles with her romantic insecurities, pleading for her sister's advice on a Valentine's Day gift for Maggie. On the city streets, the invader turns chaos into a courtship. The divine criminal neutralizes muggers and traps Kara in urban predicaments, seeking to impress her while masquerading in the iconic heroic cape of her Kryptonian cousin.
Look, up in the sky.
It's a bird.
It's a plane.
Superman?
Not quite.
By magically summoning the monster Parasite, his galactic pretension explodes into mortal fury. Monel challenges the all-powerful being to spell his own bizarre name but fails humiliatingly in his reckless audacity. The creature issues an urgent warning. A matrimonial union is the only way to prevent a local apocalypse. Driven by protective instincts, the Daxamite steals an alien artifact from Wynn capable of disabling extra-dimensional energy. The dethroned heir summons Mick Spitlick to a hostile arena, firing shots in a staged 19th century setting. Monel's courage turns to dust against the distorted divine manipulations. Under the threat of imminent execution, Kara lowers her guard and surrenders. The price to free her beloved hostage is a cold ceremony orchestrated at the legendary Fortress of Solitude. Dawn hallows the bitter lies of salvation. Kara dismisses Monel's interference with merciless words, engineering her dark bluff within the cybernetic world. When the arrogant groom crosses the frozen polar walls expecting a coronation, the abyss freezes over. Rejecting his illicit romantic claim, the Pillar of Krypton destroys an ancestral statue and reactivates the terminal for violent ends. The core reactor pulses with a suicidal self-destruct order for the Arctic Sanctuary. In a lethal panic against the countdown, the false lord begs for the abort code. The only code accepted by the terminal was the reverse signature spelled backward by the trickster god. The dictator of love is banished by the invisible, liberating power of her own cunning. While Alex finally finally enjoys a cozy dance orchestrated amidst the tender lights of her detective partner. The heroine tends to the wounds of the fray. Opening her apartment door to peace, Kara embraces Monel over the harrowing truths of the night, finally breaking through their emotional barriers with a passionate kiss, fusing the stellar differences of their two cultures. Morning light shines on a newly healed affection, but the calm gives way as the routine returns to the DO. The secrecy of the romance immediately succumbs to Monel's carefree euphoria as he shares the intimate news with everyone, embarrassing Kara with his impatient spontaneity. However, romantic bickering vanishes like smoke when urgent sirens alert the team to armored military movements by Project Cadmus on local coastal roads. Through the raging skies, John and Kara relentlessly block enemy artillery within the highway fleets. The reward for the rescue is more precious than confiscated gold. Hidden and battered among the wreckage of the imprisoned cargo lies the legendary patriarch Jeremiah Danvers. Triumphant cries overflow in the med bay as they accommodate the survivor of so much pain. Wounds to his left arm do not stop the nostalgic toasts at a warm family dinner prepared by the emotional Danvers daughters. The community celebrates a temporal resurrection, even as reports surface regarding Cadmus's ongoing nuclear threat against the alien invaders inhabiting Earth, a genocidal campaign of purification led by dark supremacist factions. Optimism suddenly fades when confronted by cold, provocative insinuations. Monel is deeply suspicious of the illogical convenience of this spectacular rescue from an impenetrable Cadmus fortress. He openly exposes the glaring vulnerabilities of the story, breaking the truce of the festivities to accuse the exhausted veteran. A covert investigation requested of Wynn's hacking expertise decodes terrifying security breaches activated by the newcomer. The evidence reveals a shocking betrayal. Jeremiah is a mole. This revelation shatters the hearts of those in denial, leading to an agonizing conflict between logic and blood loyalty. A manipulated coordinate orchestrates a wild goose chase while the true catastrophe strikes. Cadmus invades the DEO, dismantling John's psychic defenses and breaching the central vaults. Using cybernetic brute force, they steal classified, invaluable files. The escape leaves behind the raw, bitter wounds of a crushed loyalty. Explosive debris collapses onto the tracks of a mangled train. Despite the heavy, salty tears of his daughters, the voluntary exile and traitor escapes. He carries with him the secret registry of every alien on Earth, delivering it into the hands of Lillian Luthor. Her goal, a final genocidal strike. Silence buries what hope remained. The quiet night is shattered by red and blue lights. What appears to be a simple police stop is revealed as a cruel trap. An entire alien family is forced into a Cadmus van, disappearing without a trace. Silent panic grips the streets. At the DEO, the reality is grim. Wynn reveals that 26 abductions have occurred in just 1 week. The trail has a clear signature. Jeremiah Danvers taught the tyrants how to bypass the agency's radar. The weight of betrayal hangs heavy as John officially declares their former ally an enemy of the state. Desperate to warn the vulnerable community, Kara tries to publish the truth. However, the rigidity of journalism becomes her greatest barrier. Snapper Carr refuses to run the story without irrefutable sources. The danger soon invades the last peaceful refuges. During a lightning strike on an underground alien bar, Cadmus kidnaps dozens of innocents, including Lyra, Wynn's new love. Personal pain takes over the team. Blinded by rage and her father's betrayal, Alex attempts to torture an enemy prisoner. After failing a harsh loyalty test imposed by a disguised John, Alex is suspended from duty. Solitude embraces her, but Maggie remains by her side. Together, they stealthily track the true threat. Meanwhile, Jeremiah oversees Lillian Luthor's final project, a colossal ship designed to deport all aliens from Earth into the cosmic abyss. The clock ticks down mercilessly, forcing Kara to sacrifice her career by self-publishing the article. Her courage draws the enemy's fury in the form of bloody retaliation, but it buys crucial time. Alex invades the secret facility and finally confronts her father, discovering the painful sacrifice he made to protect his daughters. Explanations lose their meaning as the massive ship takes flight. In the skies, a rescue of pure willpower unfolds. With Alex fighting at the controls, Supergirl uses every fiber of her being to stall the ship's engines before it jumps into hyperspace. However, victory demands a price. In the shadows of the enemy base, Jeremiah falls to the violence of Hank Henshaw. The day is won as families are reunited, but the calm is an illusion. In the silence of space, a massive and mysterious ship heads toward Earth. Domestic peace never lasts long for those who carry the fate of the world on their shoulders. The city's calm is shattered when global transmissions are hijacked by a terrifying demand: the immediate surrender of Mon-El to the forces of a formidable star cruiser. Supergirl engages the invaders but is repelled by titanic shields and relentless artillery. To prevent the slaughter of innocents, Mon-El decides to surrender. Driven by desperation, Kara refuses to lose him and flies into the beam of light, transporting them both into the heart of the enemy fortress. Inside, the truth destroys old trusts. The soldiers bow before the intruders. The invaders are none other than the royalty of the extinct planet Daxam, revealing that Mon-El was never a simple palace guard, but the crown prince. Horrified by the cowardice of his past choices, abandoning a kingdom to burn, Kara feels the bitter sting of mutual betrayal. The relentless matriarch, Queen Rhea, demands her son return to lead what remains of the Empire. Beyond the cosmic drama, the streets of Earth strike a blow to convictions of love. Wynn's optimistic heart suffers a devastating hit when Lyra uses him as a scapegoat in a daring alien art heist. However, behind the crime lies a dark desperation, a blood debt to save her brother's life. Even while hurt, Wynn's compassion wins out. His forgiveness leads to a rescue mission that crushes the criminals and restores the bonds of loyalty. In the quiet of her apartment, wounded pride dictates Kara's destiny. Unable to reconcile with Mon-El's romantic cynicism and wavering courage, she abruptly ends the relationship, demanding he find the pride his people lost in the fire. Transformed by heroism, he defies his imperial caste and ruthlessly banishes his parents from the atmosphere and his life. Only the ashes of relief remain, dismantled in minutes by interdimensional rifts at the DEO. A mysterious, hypnotic prisoner mentally dominates the facility and escapes under a cloud of smoke. Supergirl's eyes grow heavy as she falls into a dark, mysterious coma. When she awakens, the concrete has turned into stage lights, where spotlights trap her amidst applause and theatrical performances. Lost in the infinite darkness of a melodically mesmerizing nightmare, the morning peace is stained with blood when a bounty hunter violently attacks a park in National City. The message left by the wreckage and the brutality of the armed alien is cold and non-negotiable. There is an incalculable price on Supergirl's head. Ordered by the High Command, the President enacts strict laws to prevent an apocalyptic conflict with the monarchist armada looming in the cosmic dark, severely forbidding direct attacks on the Daxamite vessel. In the government's tactical shelter, containment doors close around the Woman of Steel, a suffocating protection that defies Kara's impatience. Suspecting his own kin, Mon-El confronts the royals, receiving only denials wrapped in deceitful rhetoric. Beneath this looming war, earthly pains collide with walls of resentment. Maggie hesitates beside Alex as they attempt to settle unresolved scores from a past love torn apart by deep, unhealed falsehoods. The shield of survival crumbles under the relentless infiltration of the hostile invaders. Psychic defenses fail as dark minions, fueled by mercenary hatred, subject Supergirl to a grueling aerial assault. Through John's psychic link, the truth is exposed. The real, cowardly face behind the assassination order is Queen Rhea herself, seeking a vengeful, absolute sentence against Kara. Refusing to flee to distant cold lands, the barriers fade as extraterrestrial metal shatters the team's defenses. Sadistic traps laced with hidden, lethal kryptonite pierce Kara's skin, leaving her bleeding and helpless in the cold snow. A tragic, extortionary ultimatum forces Mon-El into eternal, absolute obedience. He accepts the shackles of exile to save Kara's life, surrendering to the relentless, tyrannical royalty. Dimensional walls bend before determined hearts. Relentless and protective, the team uses heroic illusions to deflect cosmic artillery, deceiving the Dark Matron.
Doesn't have much effect on me.
The combat rages until the gates fall, leading to a weary, resigned farewell from the king, who grants Mon-El his freedom in a final painful act of paternal redemption. The relieving embrace of the finale does not echo without profound pain. Awakening the specters of a silent cosmic war, a heartless, despotic strike destroys the innocent king. Queen Rhea's murderous, insatiable eyes now turn toward Earth, From the desolate firmament, she watches like an apocalyptic hunter, ready to bring about a genocidal end to the defenseless world. The darkness is coming. A temporary peace weighs heavily on Kara's shoulders. With no urgent crises to fight, heroism gives way to the void of a routine she barely knows how to navigate. Lena's invitation to a tech demonstration by her ex-boyfriend Jack seems like a harmless distraction, but the past rarely returns without collecting a toll, and the promise of revolutionary medical nanobots carries a suspicious shadow. Kara's investigative instincts kick in instantly, bringing her face to face with her relentless former editor, Snapper Carr. The search for the truth becomes a vital necessity. Soon after, the cost of investigating the powerful reveals itself tragically. Kara finds a terrified informant, only to watch him be consumed by a lethal robotic swarm. She survives the flames, but the witness's life is brutally snuffed out.
These nanobots are dangerous.
Wait, did you know that?
Guilt is instantaneous, and the danger proves to be microscopic, silent, and implacable. The following night, death strikes again. Another man linked to the company's fraudulent trials is torn apart by nanobots before the eyes of Kara and Snapper. Driven by the desperation to stop the bloodshed, Kara infiltrates Jack's lab with Monel's help. There, a dark recording lays bare the reality. Jack injected the machines into himself, losing his humanity to become a weapon. The betrayal hits Lena's most vulnerable point, pushing her toward an emotional precipice impossible to avoid. Ignoring Kara's warnings, Lena decides to confront the past alone. The cruelty of the situation is revealed when Beth, a corporate manipulator, confesses to controlling Jack's will. The battle for survival forces a gut-wrenching choice. While Supergirl is crushed by the deadly machines, Lena must act to save her friend. With a broken heart, she deactivates the system. The action frees Kara from imminent death, but silences Jack forever. Lena's grief is suffocating, carving yet another deep scar into her soul. The next day, Kara embraces her weeping friend, vowing to protect her from the darkness at all costs. Professionally, Kara's fierce and selfless dedication earns her job back, a small glimmer of victory amidst the chaos. However, broken hearts are easy prey. In the cold corridors of L-Corp, a majestic and lethal figure waits patiently. Queen Rhea smiles at Lena, offering an affectionate alliance wrapped in dark secrets and deadly promises. The tension between civil law and divine power walks a thin, explosive line. When Supergirl bursts into a complex hostage negotiation, Maggie's severe frustration boils over. To Kara, physical strength saves lives immediately. To Maggie, impulsive heroism tramples over the system and justice in a dangerous way. This clash of visions creates an invisible wall during a tense dinner, leaving Alex silent between the sister she venerates and the woman she deeply loves. But philosophical arguments sink into oblivion when an unthinkable retaliation strikes from the shadows. In the damp darkness of an elevator, Alex is taken without a trace. Panic engulfs the steel walls of the DEO at the sound of a phone. The kidnapper knows Kara's greatest and most dangerous secret and demands a bitter ransom. Release the imprisoned patriarch who once saved his life, or Alex's blood will be on her hands. Trapped in an isolated glass cell, Alex does not break easily, silently promising to fight until her last breath to return to her loved ones. The cruel countdown is an invisible executioner, suffocating any flickering hope. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Queen Rhea weaves her own poisonous web by exploiting hidden loneliness. Disguised as an attentive maternal figure and benevolent mentor, her cunning majesty presents forged accounts and a consoling shoulder, diverting attention toward alien technological plans masked as compassionate love. The young entrepreneur struggles against her instinctive reservations, oscillating sadly between logical distrust and an innate desperation for authentic familial affection. The bitter shock accelerates. A futile and violent attempt driven by emotion triggers a flood trap, engulfing Alex's surrendered legs. Through icy virtual lenses, confessions choke the throats of goodbyes interrupted by suffering tears. As the fatal time slips away, plunging hearts into deep gloom, Kara's imperious anguish exposes itself like never before. Irrevocable rules turn to dust in the face of living grief. A plea for compassion strips away the last moral sparks as a desperate salvation is forged through forced paternal bonds and the pleas of collapsing hostages, leading to an unforeseen agreement. Under the oppressive water drowning dark memories, the unbreakable glass shatters with terrified violence. In a rescued breath of mortal agony, oaths eternalized in gasping tears join wounds healed by the redemptive fear of steady protective hands, embracing rescued souls. However, desperate isolation cements a fatal trust, oblivious to the saving light of the fraternal love that stands against the opening abyss. A silver-armored mask may hide a familiar face, but it offers no shelter against the cold of being misunderstood. On the relentless night streets, the help offered by James under the mantle of Guardian yields involuntary dread from those he protects, cursing his helpful yet doubted core. Simultaneously, violent distortions of unknown origin tear through peaceful daytime refuges in an unprecedented lethal outburst. An insidious threat rots innocent psyches without mercy, and the force of this cruel infection hides close to the silent heart of the city. Subjugated by intellectual illusions guided by the camouflaged, silken claws of Rhea, whose own hidden despair is masked by non-existent familial triumphs, the unshakable portal accelerator threatens the very bones of a peaceful alien lineage. It traps young boys in a convulsion of atonal anguish, guiding terrified hands through oppressive, reclusive prisons. The path leads through the shattered fragility of youth, scarred by the shared trauma of paternal loss. Bridges of comfort are built in the tragic gloom, genuine, redemptive, and warm against the lethal cold of the stellar storms. Ignoring irrevocable restraints in search of a fragile peace in a maternal embrace, the deceitful royalty commands a mechanical abyss, tearing through peaceful consciences in a massive, tormenting surrender. Psychic flames of uncontrollable suffering signal an imminent apocalyptic end. In the rhythmic, fraternal pulse of human comfort, there is a struggle to silence the invasive mental demons through a liberating, innocent love. However, false morals bleed over the exhausted surrender of shattered consciences. Under the cold, ineffective barrels of failing weapons, the tragedy of lying, suicidal fathers imposes a forced, suffocating manipulation. Children are left prostrate and weak in a cowardly stellar clash, devouring fallen defenses in psychic nightmares with no escape. In the hearts of the exhausted, hope is extinguished as a stained earth is darkened and terrified, dominated by a sovereign, supreme, and final invader. The sky of National City darkens under the shadow of an implacable armada. Rhea, intoxicated by the promise of forging a new Daxam, keeps Lena Luthor prisoner on her ship, designing a cruel future. The plan is simple and devastating. Force a blood marriage between Lena and Mon-El to cement her dominion over humanity. In the streets, absolute chaos reigns. Hope seems tattered as Daxamite troops march mercilessly over police and citizens alike. In the rubble of a local bar, Kara, Alex, and Wynn seek refuge. In dark times, unlikely allies emerge from the shadows. Lillian Luthor, moved only by the savage instinct to save her own daughter, offers a truce. Tension explodes when President Marsden, revealing her own alien nature after a lethal attack on Air Force One, issues a cold, non-negotiable order. The Daxamite cruiser must be pulverized by the DEO cannon, whatever the cost. For Kara, the decision means the end of her world. Sacrificing the woman she considers a sister and the man she loves tears at her soul. It is in this abyss of hesitation that Cat Grant resurfaces. With the wisdom of one who knows the depths of human failure, Cat makes her understand that being a hero isn't about abandoning the heart, but fighting tooth and nail for those you love. A crack of determination lights the way forward. Armed with new conviction, Kara joins forces with Lillian and Henshaw to invade the enemy fortress through the somber Phantom Zone, while Cat Grant broadcasts a courageous message of resistance that awakens the oppressed city. Kara advances through the metal corridors of the enemy ship. She finds the prisoners, but the poisonous alliance with Lillian takes its toll instantly. The Luthor matriarch abruptly vanishes with only Lena, abandoning Kara and Mon-El in the Lion's Den. As a final blow, Lillian orders Alex from afar to fire the lethal weapon at the ship. Mon-El is forced to abandon the mechanical fortress to survive, but Kara refuses to retreat. She attempts one last appeal to Rhea's fading rationality. The Daxamite Queen's response comes not in words, but in pure brute force. Through the destroyed ceiling, an imposing figure descends with unmatched ferocity. Kara prepares for the worst, only to see the silhouette of the man who was always the greatest symbol of justice. Dominated by shadows and enemy mental poison, the Man of Steel raises his fists against his own family.
Superman?
The pain of facing one's own blood surpasses any physical wound. Under the corrupting influence of silver kryptonite planted by Rhea, Superman sees Kara not as his beloved cousin, but as the nefarious General Zod. The clash of gods destroys the pavement and consumes every drop of Kara's strength until she, in a desperate effort, subdues the Man of Steel and plunges into darkness. Victory tastes like the bitterness of exhaustion. In the healing silence of the Fortress of Solitude, lucid consciousness returns to Clark, crushed by the guilt of his involuntary actions. Knowing that direct warfare will bring the city's ruin, Kara seeks answers in her people's past. She invokes the unbreakable law of Daxam-Ur, a duel to the death against Rhea, where the winner decides the fate of Earth. While the arena awaits the head-on collision, brilliant minds plot in the shadows. Lena and Lillian reactivate a chemical bomb designed to saturate the Earth's atmosphere with pure lead. The element is lethal to Daxamites but harmless to humans. The perfect plan carries a tragic sentence. Activating it will also condemn Mon-El to death. Despite Kara's promises that the weapon won't be needed, the combat unfolds and the false gods break their own rules. Sensing defeat, Rhea orders her fleet to rain destruction down on innocent civilians. The private duel quickly escalates into global carnage. Covered in sharp fragments of kryptonite, Rhea crushes Kara without indulgence. However, a protector's true strength lies not in her solar cells, but in the incandescent love for her home. Even in agony, Kara regains control of the fight. But as she looks to the heavens, she sees fire falling upon the people she swore to protect. Pressed against the unshakable wall of duty, there are no alternatives. With her lips trembling in silent apologies, Kara triggers the lead device. The subtle poison dominates the planet's air. Rhea screams before turning into macabre dust, succumbing to her own inexhaustible arrogance. The victory saves the innocent, but destroys the hero's heart. The toxic air already begins to poison Mon-El's veins. In a painful trance, Kara carries him to the escape pod and gifts him her mother's necklace. Vows of eternal love are spoken before the space glass separates them forever. Later, in the freezing vacuum of the unknown, Mon-El's lonely capsule is suddenly swallowed by a wormhole. The hero is lost among the black stars without a trace. Time does not sweep away the agony. It only forces the soul to hide it behind an emblem of hope. Months after pushing the love of her life into the dark void of the cosmos, Kara buries her human essence beneath the responsibilities of the Shield. Supergirl dominates every second of her day, punishing thieves like Bloodsport with mechanical and cold efficiency. Her friendships wither, her family is left in hesitation, and a painful pride pushes away the advice of the DEO's Martian director. Kara leaves Catco, rejects her own mortal identity, and embraces the delusion that human feelings were all a tragic, useless mistake. National City's exposed wound attracts wolves disguised as builders. Morgan Edge resurfaces, not to rebuild the fallen community, but to demolish and profit under the cold pretext of corporate evolution. When he tries to usurp power by swallowing crucial parts of the media with his relentless fortune, Lena stands as an unshakable shield against his destructive ambitions. Protecting the newsroom with her own acquisitions, she draws a financial barricade against the tycoon, fighting to bring her lost friend back to the journalism she walked away from in repressed grief. But Edge's vengeance and money speak through armed steel. A cowardly missile erupts from the violent tides and shatters the foundation of the new sculptural landmark erected by the bay. Panic swallows desperate families trapped by the metal debris. When colossal pieces loom over a defenseless young girl, an unimaginable latent force ignites the muscles of her mother, Samantha. Disconnected from her own physical logic, the woman heaves the crushing weight of the architecture with pure instinct. Far away, Supergirl sinks into the murky oceanic depths, destroying the cloaked submarine responsible for the carnage. After brutally warning Edge from atop a fishing boat, Kara grants her human isolation a fragile truce. She restores forgotten bonds, but the cracks in the most sinister corners do not stop splintering. Hidden in the watery abyss excavated by the aquatic battle, the secular hull of an ancestral Kryptonian ship sleeps among inhospitable metal skeletons. Simultaneously, beneath the warm sheets of her seemingly protected home, Samantha wakes up suffocated and haunted by terrifying, unrecognizable alien screams, echoing the features of a once compassionate Allura, now a nightmare filled with the dark echoes of past stellar realms. The morning routine hides silent doubts. Ruby questions her mother about the impossible strength she displayed at the waterfront. Samantha dismisses the astonishing event as pure adrenaline, but uncertainty takes deep root in her mind. Meanwhile, in the bustling halls of Catco, Lena asserts her corporate presence firmly, creating a muted friction with James. At the DEO, a psychological threat tests the limits of sanity. The criminal known as Psy doesn't need weapons to empty vaults. Her mere presence paralyzes people in absolute terror. When Kara confronts her, the battle is not physical. Sai invades the hero's mind, forcing her to relive the harrowing memory of being launched as a child away from a Krypton in flames and ruin. The mental scars are merciless. The trauma triggers a severe panic attack, forcing Kara to flee an elevator in total despair. Alex finds her sister completely vulnerable and broken. In a painful, intimate moment, Kara confesses her insecurities about her true place in the world. The weight of the cape has never felt so crushing. Danger strikes again when Sai spreads panic at a construction site, nearly ending Ruby's life under a massive wrecking ball. Kara intervenes, but a new mental attack exposes a dark vision. Monel's ship drifting lost in the darkness of space. Supported by Alex's firm words, Kara breaks the shackles of terror and defeats the illusion to knock out the criminal. A beam of hope appears, small but powerful. In the silence that follows, normalcy begins to shatter. Alone in her garage, Samantha picks up a heavy steel crowbar and bends it without any effort, realizing with terrifying clarity that her daughter was right all along. Far away, a lonely John receives an urgent warning at the bar. Mars is calling him back. The call of one's own blood cannot be ignored. John prepares to depart for Mars to aid Magan, and Kara insists on marching by his side. They arrive on the arid red planet and discover a perverse reality. John's father, Myrn, is a prisoner in a white Martian concentration camp. The enemy seeks absolute control of an ancestral weapon, and the old patriarch is the only one capable of locating it. Back on Earth, old wounds bleed secretly in the present. While Alex and Maggie prepare for their wedding, the detective gathers trembling courage to invite her estranged father. He kicked her out of the house at 14 just for loving another girl. His sudden arrival brings a fragile sense of healing, but the reconciliation proves to be a bitter illusion. On Mars, a prisoner's broken spirit blocks the path to salvation. Myrn refuses to believe John is real, convinced by past trauma that the apparition is merely a cruel mental trap. Facing imminent execution at the hands of the Resistance, John connects his mind to his father's, sharing the purest memory of his daughters running through the house. The false walls finally crumble. Myrn weeps as he realizes his son truly survived the genocide.
May I? Jean, my son.
A violent storm explodes against the captors. With the return of hope, John subdues the cruel enemy forces and recovers the gleaming staff. The Resistance entrusts the revered relic to the director's hands to be eternally hidden on Earth. Resounding triumphs in war rarely echo in the common affairs of the heart. Maggie's father abruptly abandons the party, unable to accept his daughter kissing her future wife. The detective confronts him in the street and realizes she is finally free from seeking paternal approval. However, an even more fatal fracture cracks between the brides. Alex is shocked by her strong desire to have children, a warm family future that Maggie refuses to share. Blind devotion can easily camouflage itself as gratitude. Samantha finds a mysterious pamphlet engraved with the symbol of Rao, the ancient Kryptonian deity. Kara and her allies scour the shadows and trace the paper's origin to a silent cult led by Thomas Coville. He is the devout survivor of a plane crash that the Maid of Might prevented years ago. His faithful followers are desperate victims saved by the hero, now worshipping her sickly as an untouchable goddess. The fine line between salvation and madness fades fast. Kara discovers that individuals are deliberately setting brutal fires just to be sacredly rescued from the flames. Upon confronting Coville, the preacher sees perfectly through the submissive protector behind the civilian glasses. In his warped mind, he believes he holds the prophetic burden of purifying her of her human weaknesses. Obsession reaches the limit of collective sacrifice. Coville transports the Beta-Hedron, an unstable Kryptonian reactor, to the foundations of a crowded hockey arena. The plan is to force Supergirl to emerge in her grandest form, to expunge the threat and save 15,000 innocent lives in one stroke. However, the digital clock reveals an unforeseen sentence. The core pulses with kryptonite radiation. When Kara collapses on the concrete floor, bleeding before her perplexed worshippers, Coville's prophetic vision is utterly crushed. Old habits die hard in the face of pain. With Alex's brute help and Coville's desperation, the glowing reactor is swallowed by an abyss melted by Kara's exhausted heat vision. The explosion is muffled by the earth, but its tremors shake much more than concrete. The aftermath suffocates what little peace remains. Watching Ruby sing at school, Alex rushes to the hallway and breaks down in tears, consumed by the imminent pain of leaving the love of her life for an empty cradle. In the silence of her home, Samantha's world falls into a maddening abyss, her skin violently marked with alien script as she feels the sinister approach of an invisible specter. Deep in the submerged darkness of the old port, the reactor's tremor echoes inside the ancestral Kryptonian ship. A mysterious pod awakens to earthly life. Danger takes no days off in National City, but the most destructive battles are often the silent ones. Kara and Alex easily thwart a prison bus hijacking, but the real crisis arises on the screens. Morgan Edge publicly accuses Lena of poisoning children with lead, manipulating the city's family's pain. The burden of guilt weighs crushingly on Lena's shoulders. Trying to protect everyone around her, she temporarily steps down from leadership at Catco and entrusts the position to James. Precaution, however, doesn't stop the hatred from reaching them. During a press conference, an enraged father's desperation turns into gunfire, and James is hit. Pain also haunts the doorstep at home. Alex and Maggie finally confront the harsh reality of their incompatible futures. Love is not enough when dreams walk in opposite directions. Overcome by personal remorse and fueled by alcohol, Lena seeks shelter at Samantha's apartment. While her friend rests, Samantha and Kara frantically dive into databases. A dark pattern emerges. All the sick children attended the same local festival. The truth sets Lena free from guilt. It wasn't a lead leak. Someone acted deliberately, contaminating the event's pool. Impulsive, Lena decides to act alone and confronts Edge. She ends up knocked out and trapped in an autonomous cargo plane designed to spread more poison through the city skies. Kara crosses the air in time to rescue her friend and intervene in the catastrophe, but Edge secures his immunity by framing his own lackey. The day ends with unbearable goodbyes. Maggie leaves her ring at the door, definitively ending their story. Desolate, Alex decides to return to Midvale with Kara to pick up the pieces. Far from corporate and romantic conflicts, a terrifying discovery takes shape. Samantha prepares her daughter for bed when she notices a detail on her own jacket. A crushed bullet falls from the garment. Her skin shows not a single scratch. What once seemed like pure coincidence has now become an undeniable fact. Back at the familiar family home in Midvale, the well-known walls offer no immediate relief to the Danvers sisters. The grief over losing Monel still silences Kara's heart, while the tragic end of her engagement consumes Alex's spirit. Within the refuge of their old bedroom, the silent tension explodes into relentless words. Eliza watches from a distance, perfectly aware that true healing requires masks to be torn down. Painful memories pull them both back to a time when their sisterly bond didn't yet exist. 10 years ago, Kara could barely adapt to her new life on Earth. Alex, for her part, saw her sister's alien strength as a constant curse on her teenage peace. Their entire world collapses when the murdered body of Kenny Lee is found in the woods. He was the only boy who saw Kara's strength with pure fascination instead of fear or derision. Unthinkable grief quickly turns into a desperate search for justice. Working as true allies for the first time, the young women pull at the dangerous threads of the mystery. Discovering Kenny's laptop hidden among the leaves, they reveal lethal secrets photographed in the dead of night. Alex's courage puts her directly in the crosshairs of Sheriff Collins, a man willing to kill again to cover his drug roots. Facing imminent death in a secluded basement, Alex doesn't flinch or tremble. She knows she is never alone. Breaking her own promises to the DEO, Kara violently smashes through concrete walls in a lethal rescue that seals the murderer's fate. There, she accepts her powers not as a stigma, but as the ultimate shield of protection.
Are you okay?
The blood spilled would never bring Kenny back, but it forged two sisters, inseparable for life. In the peaceful present on the porch, watching the sun shine through their late friend's old telescope, Kara and Alex realize that even massive abysses don't have to destroy them. The two return to the road, ready to heal. A new day dawns. In the crushing silence of National City's depths, ancient secrets rest beneath murky waters. An underwater exploration team overlooks the invisible danger and awakens an old Kryptonian vessel, alerting the DEO's radar. Upon invading the cold corridors of the sunken ship, Kara freezes before a ghostly image firing weapons. It's not an invader, it's Monel. He fills his lungs with Earth's lead-poisoned air and breathes easily, a cold, indescribable expression masking an abyssal rift within him. While Kara struggles to decipher the silent cruelty of the man she loved so much, Samantha tears through the thin layer of lies in her maternal routine. Pressing her own flesh into boiling water without leaving a burn mark, she corners her adoptive mother and forces a confession. Her civilian life is a facade woven around an old space pod in the barn. Abandonment burns inside her. In the subterranean halls of the DEO, desperation shatters trust. Monel breaches the agency's security to save travelers locked in stasis pods within the secret ship. Confronting him in the water, Kara's world enters a deep, suffocating collapse. Pulled into the blind abyss of space, Monel lived a lost era of 7 years within the 31st century. When the oxygen evaporates from the ship, Kara brutally smashes the containment and frees the alien woman trapped in the pod's blind wreckage. Seconds later, Imra opens her eyes. The gentle kiss shared between her and Monel completely unhinges Kara's composure. She hears nothing else. Monel is with his wife. Elsewhere, guided by dark visions, Samantha marches through the desert wilderness. The ground gives way, raising terrifying columns and forming the legendary, untouched fortress of Sanctuary from ancestral prophecy. Within the abysses of the black construction, a desolate projection confesses her cursed fate. Samantha is neither human nor a protector. The prophetic mantle declares her an immortal hunter of judgment, a profane assassin called a world killer. As the blood price for her conversion, her precious ruby will vanish forever from her erased heart. Samantha's throat tears as the torture reprograms her flesh. With wounds healed and glowing red flames tracing her sclera, humanity finds its grave. Rain opens her mortal eyes forever. Samantha wakes from a suffocating nightmare, her mind blank regarding her journey into the desert. Forgetfulness is a cruel blessing in the face of the darkness silently consuming her. At the DEO, the weight of the future falls on Kara. Monel and Imra, members of the Legion of Superheroes stranded in the 21st century, need to repair their ship. Kara tries to keep up appearances and organizes a holiday get-together, but the couple declines the invitation, carving an even deeper void in the hero's chest. During the celebration, Samantha hides her exhaustion with rehearsed smiles and teases Lena about the evident spark between her and James, but the false normalcy is short-lived. John calls Kara to examine a scorched field. Burned into the shattered earth lies an unknown Kryptonian symbol. A new threat has just signed its name to the city. While Lena and James investigate a dangerous lead and survive a laser ambush, the true evil acts from the shadows. In prison, Thomas Coville whispers prophecies of destruction to Kara, warning that the devil is walking among them. Kara's mind, however, is divided. She confronts Monel and, her voice breaking, implores him to be happy with Imra. The worst blow isn't seeing him with someone else, but realizing the light that once shone in his eyes when he looked at her has vanished forever. The romantic grief is brutally interrupted. Rain, the Kryptonian executioner thirsting for lethal justice, unleashes chaos. Morgan Edge narrowly escapes, and Kara flies to face the entity, unaware she is striking Samantha's body. The clash atop Catco is merciless and destructive. Rain doesn't just want to win, she wants to massacre Hope. After relentlessly beating the Girl of Steel, Rain throws Kara's bloodied body from the top of the skyscraper. Agents rescue her from the broken concrete, but the defeat is absolute. The next morning, Ruby runs to hug her mother and finds her motionless, dressed in black, staring into the cold vastness outside. Kara's body lies motionless on a DEO medical gurney, trapped in a deep coma following Rain's punishment. Her mind has become an impenetrable cage. Brainiac 5 projects his own consciousness into the hero's thoughts to guide her back, but she refuses to accept the reality of her defeat. The trauma prevents her from opening the door to awakening. Meanwhile, oblivious to the dual identity destroying her humanity, Samantha plays with Ruby. A careless move breaks a picture frame, revealing Rain's photo in the newspaper. The abyss stares back. Terror finds its voice on the surface. Rain smashes Catco's windows, demanding the cameras broadcast her absolute war on crime. Nothing will stand in her way. The panic pushes the DEO to the limit. Monel refuses the call for help, fearing that intervening will alter the timeline, forcing John and Alex to act alone. When they stage a robbery to lure the World Killer, the ambush fails miserably. Rain ignores the grenades and shatters Alex's leg with disturbing ease. The monster is a force of nature. As Rain marches toward a prison to slaughter inmates and guards alike, inaction becomes intolerable. Monel breaks his rules, and the Legion sets off for battle. In the confinement of her own mind, Kara understands that brute strength is not her true anchor to the world. The memory of gently stroking a cat, the feeling of being vulnerable and human, finally unlocks her psychological cell. Kara wakes in time to intercept Rain, injecting liquid kryptonite into her veins. The monster flees, agonized, but survives. Later, in the silence of recovery, Kara recharges her strength by sharing wine with Alex and promises with Monel. Conversely, in the depths of her lair, Rain recovers from the poison. Guided by ancestral echoes and Coville's twisted help, the mission changes. She will not reign alone. The clock is ticking against everyone in Rain's shadow.
To know how to find them.
I can help you with the path.
El Mayada.
Stronger together.
A ray of hope emerges at the DEO via the stars. A Kryptonian priestess holds secrets about the world killers within the walls of Fort Roz. However, the intergalactic prison orbits a blue star that eradicates Kara's Kryptonian powers. To survive the lethal environment, she forms an unlikely trinity of criminals, recruiting Livewire, the telepath Psi, and the Voyager Imra. On Earth, Samantha leaves Ruby in Alex's care before departing. As she walks, voices crawl inside her skull, erasing her consciousness. Rain takes the wheel. Far from cosmic battles, Alex tries to mask her own suffering when a simple text message reminds her of Maggie. Finding purpose in protecting Ruby, Alex channels a fearsome FBI persona to scare off a girl bullying her heart niece. Meanwhile, Kara's ship tragically plunges out of orbit toward the flames of the blue star. Only the sharp intellect of Wynn and Brainiac, resonating with old Earth satellites, prevents the crew's immediate carbonization. Within the hollow halls of Fort Roz, Kara finds the sought-after priestess. But before she can gather any salvation, Rain lands, immune to the stellar effects, and executes the captive without hesitation. Heat vision blasts target Kara's chest, but Livewire throws herself into the mortal path. The shock of the sacrifice echoes through the chamber until Psi pierces the world killer's invulnerable mind, injecting an illusion of a despairing Ruby. Pure maternal terror breaks the destroyer's programming, forcing her to retreat. The rescue costs Livewire her final breath. Back home, the reality of her complete blackout corrodes Samantha, who confesses to Alex about the massive gaps in her memory. The fear of losing herself is real, but the wheel of fate does not pause. On the sidewalks of another city, an ordinary woman saves a life by pushing a car with titanic strength. Her eyes burn with a deep, blinding white, signaling that a new threat has awakened. Shadows of the past and nefarious premonitions haunt Kara. Supergirl's face contorts in torment as nightmares of Rain and a new Kryptonian threat invade her mind. The danger is not just an echo of Krypton, but an imminent reality. Monel brings grim news. The world killers may have evolved, becoming immune to kryptonite. Meanwhile, desperation begins to suffocate Samantha. Headaches and terrifying lapses lead her to seek Alex's help, searching for any medical explanation for her life's blackouts. The fear of losing control and abandoning her daughter Ruby eats her alive. Away from biological crises, the city seethes with corporate betrayals. Morgan Edge's vehicle is sabotaged in a near-fatal attempt on his life. He storms into Catco in a rage, pinning the blame on Lena, whose hands remain clean. Shortly after, Lena takes a sip of her coffee and collapses. Poison burns through her veins relentlessly. Time becomes a scarce luxury. Kara uses her freeze breath to delay death in a desperate race to the DO lab. The investigation reveals dark traces. The warfare technology used by the assassin bears the L Corp signature, pointing to one person, Lillian Luthor. The matriarch resurfaces, armed and determined to bathe the streets in Edge's blood to protect her daughter. For Lena, family loyalty never justifies murder. She joins forces with Kara and Monel, thwarting Lillian's lethal plans during a luxurious high society gala. Under pressure, Edge confesses his crimes and ends up behind bars, while Lillian is taken away in complete ruin. Back at the DEO, Sam's test results show no physical anomalies, but a healthy body does not erase the terror of a fractured mind. A thread of hope flickers when Wynn intercepts the trail of potential world killers. Kara focuses her instincts on a single name, Julia Freeman. The silent past is about to collide with the flames of the present. The hunt leads Kara and the team directly to Julia Freeman's doorstep. What seemed to be an ordinary woman transforms into a deafening nightmare in seconds. Cornered and terrified, Julia unleashes a devastating sonic scream, exposing her true nature before being subdued and taken into DEO custody. Behind cold glass walls, the civilian's humanity is pushed into the abyss, making way for her dark half, Purity. The interrogation becomes a psychological battlefield. Alex's unyielding, relentless fury clashes with Kara's exhausted attempts to rescue the soul of the imprisoned woman. As tension consumes the isolated base, earthly dramas carry a bitter weight. Seeking some level of normalcy, Sam tries to reconnect with Ruby at an ice skating rink. Far away, burdened by the failures of a future marriage, Monel vents to Joan under the stellar shadows of a damaged ship. John knows all too well that love requires pure vulnerability and encourages the young man not to run from his feelings for Imra. At the height of the crisis, a power surge caused by Wynn's repair attempts shatters the locks on Purity's cell. She doesn't just wake up, she massacres the defenses. Overpowering the guards, she tears out the power source and escapes into the city's subterranean chaos. At that same moment, horror truly finds Sam. In the middle of a lighthearted skate, her eyes change. Intense red erases the loving mother, leaving Ruby alone in the cold crowd. In the subway tunnels, the final clash unfolds. Protected by new technology that dampens Purity's lethal sound, Supergirl and the team push the entity to her limits. As everything begins to collapse around them, a fragile miracle takes hold of the chaos. Julia's human heart takes control for a sublime moment of clarity. She surrenders willingly to save Alex, but her noble sacrifice is intercepted by Rain's murderous claws, which promptly drag Julia into the frozen depths of her fortress. Devastated by the uncertainty regarding her mother, Ruby seeks comfort in Lena's arms. It is in this very shelter that the beast resurfaces. Sam falters and transforms into Rain for a brief but terrifying second right in front of the CEO of L Corp. Lena finally deciphers the worst of secrets. The promise to cure her friend now carries the weight of all the world's death and destruction. A fragile attempt to find relief in the loose songs of a bar is quickly stifled by grim news. Wynn freezes instantly. Toyman, his own imprisoned father, has been found dead and alone in his cell. Grief proves to be a treacherous emotion, especially when having to bury a monster. At the cemetery, the family wound opens wider with the arrival of Wynn's mother, long estranged from everything. Decades of agonizing silence covered a bitter secret. She was forced to abandon the boy under constant death threats from her husband. But the worst villains usually plan a final show. The wake soon turns into a rapid death trap when the coffin is revealed to house a terrible bomb. The dust has barely settled when the DEO is hit by a swarm of mechanical monkeys carrying direct threats. While Supergirl tears each figure to the ground, a sinister discovery gains traction. A bloodthirsty and devoted apprentice has taken over the Toyman's factory. But it isn't just explosive enemies destroying the group's sanity. The human condition strikes deep. Myrn shows evident lapses and continuous irritation. Without John realizing the pain, his wise father carries the unbearable frustration of severe dementia, isolating himself. Stubbornness leads Wynn's mother to investigate the parts on her own until she enters a lair. Before she can ask for help, the elderly woman is brutally captured and trapped in the Toyman apprentice's dangerous snares. Racing frantically against the worst odds and poisonous gears, Wynn, Kara, James, and Monel speed through the old docks. Cornered by the arsenal, Kara's movements are cut off in a special compartment, and Monel burns his knees in a suicidal action to pull the hero out as her oxygen fails. Using old tricks to overcome the same devious sins of his own blood, Wynn neutralizes the mind behind the horror with supreme skill. The echoes of the explosions fade, though deadly revelations emerge within the Allies' ranks. Excuses for lost time are no longer enough when Monel admits the true role of the Legion's return to Kara's present. They weren't drawn here by chance, but are desperately aiming to extinguish the heartbeat of a new creature, Pestilence, the relentless destroyer and dark empress who will plague the distant future. But the action turns solitary nearby. In the deepest, most sterile reaches of a shielded room, pure hopelessness hides. Under strict straps and the medical lights of an iron table lies Samantha. In apparent methodical silence, Lena Luthor works around the iron bed, crossing the dangerous line of what is acceptable to free and save her best friend from her evil claws. Every step toward saving a soul hides hands stained by the darkest intentions. weapons, Lena Luthor crosses a dangerous line. In the depths of her secret lab, she awakens Samantha from an induced trance. The truth revealed is a crushing weight. Sam's memory lapses coincide exactly with Reign's cruel attacks on the city. The cellular mutation is undeniable, and the monster is taking root in the body of a woman desperately trying to be just a mother. In parallel, the mind of a wise Martian crumbles. At the DEO, Murn's lapses become unpredictable weapons. In a desperate attempt to preserve his corroding memories, he conjures old telepathic prayers that affect the minds around him.
My son will not put me back in one!
Control evaporates, throwing Wynn's agents into a violent delirium and releasing all the alien prisoners from their cells. Kara faces the revolt with a new lethality, using her own cape as an extension of her strikes, a trick learned in grueling training sessions alongside Mon-El. At the epicenter of the armed chaos, John must face a son's deepest pain, intervening to stop his own father's mental decline. The silence that follows Murn's sad apology carries the inevitable weight of time. In the darkness of captivity, Sam's patience yields to despair. Rage ignites Reign's essence, forcing Lena to keep her protective shields at their limit. When the human mind regains control and sees the recorded horrors of her own actions, a mother's absolute panic takes over. Sam begs Lena to send away her greatest weakness, her daughter. To her, love demands sacrifice. Far from this silent agony, Kara and Mon-El soar through the skies of National City in an attempt to heal old wounds. But tranquility is a lie that falls from the air. A grim rain of dead birds hits the concrete floor. The shiver down the spine says what words fear to announce. Death walks the earth. Pestilence has arrived. The plague does not choose victims or locations. A simple woman hands out cookies downtown, only to leave a trail of blood, cold sweat, and instant death. The invisible contagion spreads through simple human contact. Fear consumes the streets and isolates the infected under massive quarantine domes. The halls of the DEO smell of defeat. The infection penetrates the highest defenses, bringing Wynn down with tremors and hemorrhaging. Time runs fast against the collective brain's science. When Alex's life force begins to be slowly drained by the virus and the monitors fail, desperation exposes the terrible fragility of those who risk their own skin to save others. John realizes the true war is being fought at the hospital bedsides. While death suffocates National City, an intimate hell consumes Samantha. Subjected to dangerous electrical currents in Lena's hideout, the mother's consciousness travels to an ethereal valley. There, under ash-colored skies, she brutally faces the red eyes and demonic face of Reign. Her frightened voice cries out for human mercy, but the echo responds only with death threats directed at Ruby.
Especially her. Your heart, your strength. I will kill Ruby. Burn her.
Lena's promising shield seems fragile in the face of Sam's internal apocalypse. At the epicenter of the moral outbreak, ideals collide. Imra, haunted by grief over a future promise of her sister's loss, carries a death dart at the ready. Kara, like a beacon refusing to fade, staunchly believes in the tiny human soul hidden within pestilence. When they confront Dr. Grace Parker, Kara's light finds no home. Some souls embrace the darkness all too willingly. The bloody clash nearly annihilates the heroes, but the second Celestial Assassin's dark detour steals the final prize. The dart strikes not killing, but drawing a genetic cure from the alien blood on the blade. The vaccine is formulated. Alex breathes, but short victories usually turn bitter quickly. The danger ignored the doors, flying toward Lena's home. Protection was in vain. The claws of pestilence and purity free reign, and the skies fill to witness the birth of a devilish trinity forged by universal hatred. Truth destroys bridges and raises barriers that time can hardly repair. When Lena confesses to the DEO that she subdued Reign using the lethality of green kryptonite, Kara suffers a blow far beyond any ballistic arsenal. Trust implodes. However, personal remorse gives way to an overwhelming threat. Encrypted within the darkness of the Book of Rao, an ancient liturgy of the apocalypse takes shape. The three world killers begin a cosmic refrain at the fortress of Sanctuary, ready to blot out the sun with claws of cosmic lead. To save a physical planet, minds must invade dead dimensions. Through the cold machinery of the 31st century virtual brain, Kara, Alex, and Lena travel the psychic currents directly to the desolate labyrinth of Juru. Among spectral shadows, they witness the psychological ties of their opponents, finding only dark remnants of Pestilence's extinct decency. Pestilence's humanity dies first in the invisible trenches of emotion. Samantha battles for the fragile maintenance of her name, focusing on Ruby's distant eyes. In the realm of strained friendship, night watches challenge heroes. Guided by Kara, James crosses Lena's facility ready to betray her and search for green stones. But in the final corridor, the Guardian's armor yields, smothered by unshakable faith in a woman surrounded by dark skepticism. He prefers to fail in his masked duty than to break a rare spark of true companionship. In the hidden dimension, false steps wake sleeping dogs. Rain scents intruding minds and immediately seizes the biological fists on Earth, destroying containers and flying to join the eclipse. The Legion clashes in a deafening scenario with the forces of Doomsday. Crossfire tears stones apart until the unthinkable occurs. Under sonic torture, Purity recovers her gentle mind, driving her lethal sonic screams against Pestilence, annihilating the threat that caused the Legion's chronological crusade. The spilled blood poisons them both, and their sighs fade in Rain's cold and hungry fists. The post-battle silence settles into devastating confessions, while James and Lena exchange dangerous secrets, and the admission that kryptonite can be synthetically manufactured shocks the Guardian. An isolated Empress does not mourn the devoured twin souls. Floating like a vengeful god, she leans in to listen to the final sadistic whistle of evil. The pure lineage will leave no trace of human weakness. Ruby will be her primary kill. The peace of the night is shattered when Rain invades Lena's apartment. The brutal assault in search of Ruby is momentarily halted by a lethal spray of synthetic kryptonite, but the countdown to annihilation only accelerates. At the DO labs, Myrn's mind begins to fragment, while the Legion prepares for a painful farewell. Dust from a distant future changes hands, carrying both promises and invisible espionage orchestrated by Brainiac 5. Time is running out. Kara and John seek answers from Patricia, Sam's adoptive mother. Maternal intuition had always sensed the truth hidden in the terrifying drawings of Sam's childhood, but the reunion is silenced by death. Rain, now with the powers of pestilence and purity surging through her veins, descends upon the house with relentless fury. Amidst the brutal battle, Patricia is fatally wounded. In her final moments of agony, she wrests a promise from Kara to ensure Ruby knows she was loved. The weight of grief stifles any spark of hope. Desperation forces bitter truths to light. Convinced by James, Lena hands over her sample of synthetic kryptonite to Kara. Instead of gratitude, Supergirl overflows with rage. Trust is a luxury they can no longer afford. Ruby's impenetrable hideout crumbles when the World Killer finally breaches the fortified mansion. Kara and Monel arrive at the last second. Massive bursts of kryptonite bring the villain down, revealing the unthinkable. The mask falls. Ruby stares in horror at the corrupted face of her own mother. Innocence shatters in an unforgettable instant. Rain ends up imprisoned in Lena's personal containment cell. Victory tastes like ash. Alex tries to comfort a deeply traumatized Ruby, confessing that the lies were merely a flawed shield meant to protect her from the pain. In a silent elevator, the chasm between old friends deepens dramatically. Lena, unaware of the secret hidden beneath Kara's glasses, coldly admits she has lost all trust in Supergirl. The resentment has taken deep root. A new terror emerges from the shadows when a dark journal falls into James's hands at Catco. Coville's fanatical followers aren't building atomic bombs. They are planning the impossible, a blood ritual to give birth to a new world killer. The streets also take their toll. James faces battles on two fronts daily. Ambushed by hostile cultists and unjustly cornered by police prejudice, the weight of racism and his secret identity suffocates him. He decides that Guardian will no longer live on anyone else's terms. It is time to reclaim his own narrative before the world. Far away, deep trauma alienates Ruby from any affection. The fear of carrying her mother's murderous genetic curse consumes her entirely. It takes the tragic wisdom of Myrn, a survivor of cruel interplanetary genocides, to coax a brief smile from the frightened girl with Martian stories. To save the innocent, Tanya voluntarily walks into the cult's sharp clutches. Monel infiltrates the ritual of insanity, and the carnage begins. Blind devotion quickly consumes Olivia, who embraces the dark power of an ancestral rock. The grotesque transformation begins.
The false god. Right on cue.
Only Kara's searing heat vision, burning the cursed emblem directly off Olivia's skin, ends the nightmare before National City bleeds. At home, a small act of rebellion unites two lost souls. Alex helps Ruby dye her hair blue. Unable to make false promises about a clean future, Alex simply vows to fight tooth and nail for every sunrise by the girl's side. For her, family is built through pain. Hope still pulses in the cold of the infinite cosmos. Lena and Wynn track a space meteor capable of curing Samantha. Kara and Monel set off into the dark void. But back on Earth, the ashes of fanaticism still burn bright under Koval's sadistic gaze. The void swallows veteran heroes in fractions of a second. Beyond the dark side of the moon, Kara and Monel's ship is violently dragged by a mysterious light beam, severing all lifelines to Earth. The silence of space becomes deafening. In the depths of the lab, time flows like poison. Rain begins to adapt her biology to the lethality of kryptonite. The creature's death seems to slip through their fingers, while Samantha's human essence agonizes beyond repair. Brutality destroys mundane peace when gunfire tears through the air around Alex and Ruby on an ordinary afternoon. The palpable terror of losing the girl throws Alex into an obsessive and reckless manhunt. John uses his abilities to shift into Alex's form, drawing the invisible shooter into the light and unearthing buried ghosts from the Fort Ross prison. The ruthless and nearly lethal ambush forces Alex to confront the undeniable fragility of her own survival. Millions of miles from National City, the unwavering laws of loss collapse. Walking through the luminous debris of a lost world, Kara finds a miracle bathed in tears. Her mother, Allura, is alive.
Is that you?
The heart of Krypton, Argo City, survived the total annihilation. The desperate embrace between mother and daughter seeks to heal rifts the universe could never close. But the apocalyptic war respects no emotions. Kara fights back tears and stands before the High Council of Argo, pleading for the sacred black rock of Utica to save Earth. In a luminous act of empathy, Monel uses 31st century technology to save a dying boy. Compassion triumphs, and the council grants the cure. However, evil walks among the saints. Selena, a revered ruler on the Argo Council, smiles macabrely at their departure. She is the primordial force behind Sam's destruction, the high priestess who whispered ruin into Rain's mind. Kara and Monel's frantic return carries the weight of redemption. Meanwhile, on Earth, Rain confronts Lena's demons, threatening to shatter the cell's mortal key. Kara lands with the cure at the exact minute the nightmare peaks. Alarms echo, containment fields snap like paper. The World Killer is finally free from captivity, ready for the withered harvest of humanity. In the chaos of battle, science offers a fragile salvation. Lena channels the power of the Black Rock, forging a cure that violently rips Rain from Samantha's body. The monster collapses, leaving behind an exhausted mother who only wishes to hold her daughter again. But peace is a fleeting visitor. Feeling the weight of her reconstructed past, Kara makes a painful decision. She must return to Argo to live with her mother, Allura. Alex, swallowing the pain of goodbye, gives her blessing for her sister to finally find herself. Without hesitation, Monel accepts Kara's invitation, and the two leave Earth in search of a quiet life among the stars. On Earth, the absence of its greatest protector reveals immediate cracks. An ordinary man, armed with lethal technology stolen from the DEO, pushes National City to the brink. John, carrying the burden of command, disarms the shooter peacefully, realizing his organization must evolve beyond brute force. However, his greatest battle occurs in the silent corridors of his own heart. His father, Myrn, gently insists on performing an ancient Martian ritual to pass on his memories before death claims him. John resists, blinded by the desperate love of a son who refuses to say goodbye. Light years away, the utopian streets of Argo hide a deadly shadow. Kara's instincts awaken when debris nearly claims an innocent life at the market, leading her to discover a dark truth. The daughters of Juru, led by the high priestess Selena, have been lurking in plain sight all along. In National City, a simple glass slips from Samantha's trembling hand, shattering on the floor, a terrifying omen that the cure may have failed. And as Cavill waits patiently in an open field, welcoming Selena to Earth, the true apocalypse knocks silently at the door. power. Time slips through their fingers, and the signs are impossible to ignore. Samantha's body begins to fail repeatedly, her human cells fighting a losing battle against the Kryptonian darkness leaking back into her veins. At the DEO, a different kind of end unfolds. Myrn shares a tearful goodbye with Alex, making peace with his imminent passing. He and John finally begin the sacred memory transfer ritual, father and son united by a chasm of grief and a legacy that transcends mortality. But grief must wait when survival itself is at stake. Selena and the Daughters of Juru launch a devastating siege on the DEO, hunting for the stored blood of the fallen world killers. Alex fights with everything she has to protect Ruby and win. But even her most relentless fury is futile against the Kryptonian warriors. On Argo, Kara manages to contact Wynn through an ancient crystal, desperately guiding him to build a transmat portal. In a stroke of pure strategy, Kara tricks the invaders into activating the gateway, allowing her, Mon-El, and Allura to drop directly onto the terrestrial battlefield. However, the victory is hollow. The priestesses escape with the unholy blood, leaving only panic and ruins in their wake. With the macabre ingredients secured at the Fortress of Sanctuary, Selena completes the dark ritual. The earth trembles violently as Rain is forged anew, now entirely separate from Samantha's physical form. The monster's first breath is drawn over Coville's lifeless body, marking the birth of absolute, uncontrollable terror. As the city walls crumble and Samantha slides further toward death, John and Myrn shatter their sacred ritual to face the looming catastrophe. The World Killer has returned, and this time, there is no remnant of humanity to hold her back. The planet screams in agony as Rain's terraforming fractures the globe. Cities burn, oceans rage, and the heroes wage an immediate, desperate war against the fury of nature itself. In the dark depths of the earth, a heartbreaking sacrifice is sealed. Myrn shares one last poignant memory with John, before plunging permanently into the planet's core. He gives his life to stabilize the world, leaving his son an eternal legacy of love. Meanwhile, in the mystical realm of Juru, Samantha faces her own ghosts. Guided by the forgiven spirit of her adoptive mother, she drinks from the true fountain, claiming the strength needed to retake control of her destiny. The final confrontation against Rain at the DEO is a symphony of raw power and cruelty. Supergirl clashes with the World Killer, but even her tireless spirit is subdued by the creature's hate. Just when the fatal blow seems inevitable, a superpowered Samantha emerges, driving a ruthless sword through the monster. But dark gods rarely die in silence. In her final breath, Rain releases a monstrous wave of heat vision, incinerating Mon-El, Allura, and Samantha herself. Surrounded by the ashes of the people she loves most in the universe, Kara refuses to accept defeat. Risking everything on a temporal rift, she violently tears the fabric of time, hurling herself back into the past. Given a second chance, Kara alters destiny at the last second. She forces Rain and Samantha to touch the Black Rock together, dragging the struggle into the spiritual plane of Juru, where the lost souls banish the World Killer forever. The wake of the war leaves a serene landscape of closure. Wynn bravely departs for the 31st century to save the future, while Mon-El and Kara share a mature and painful goodbye, accepting that their duty outweighs their hearts. Kara finally embraces Earth as her only home, and Alex smiles as she officially takes over as director of the DEO. Peace seems to have finally embraced National City. Samantha breathes a sigh of relief, entirely human once more, but untapped powers always cast a long shadow. In the confines of her lab, Lena secretly continues her dangerous experiments with the remaining Black Rock, and thousands of miles away, on the frozen borders of Siberia, the stone's magic had already silently created a terrifying new reality. A young woman walks coldly toward the light of Russian soldiers, wearing a face the world knows perfectly well, an exact copy of Kara Zor-El. Kara streaks across the globe, saving lives from Madrid to Kaznia with unwavering resolve. However, beneath the surface of National City, hatred silently takes root. The political climate boils as President Marsden ignores rising tensions. At the DEO, Alex steps into her new leadership role with a firm hand, though the pressures and bureaucracy of the position begin to weigh on her shoulders. At the same time, James grapples with the weight of having revealed his identity as guardian to the world, knowing legal consequences are lurking. Lena, ever protective and calculating, moves her own pieces in secret to ensure James remains safe. While John tries to find new purpose in an alien support group, brutal violence hits the streets. Siblings Otis and Mercy Graves coordinate ruthless attacks, stealing advanced weaponry and bombing peaceful locations where John's group used to meet. Old habits die hard, and Mercy, a former head of security for the Luthor family, proves to be a lethal threat. Kara and John clash. For Kara, the attacks are the start of a dangerous coordinated war. For John, getting involved threatens his newfound quest for neutrality and inner peace. Tension spills into the public sphere when the Graves siblings invade Camp David during a presidential summit, using an EMP weapon to plunge the site into darkness. Alex proves her worth in the field, fighting fiercely against the invaders, while Kara manages to capture Otis. But the extremists' true victory takes shape shortly after. Images of the attack leaked to the news, revealing the country's biggest secret to the world. President Marsden is actually an alien. The foundation of public trust suffers an irreparable fracture. Far from this political chaos, in the frigid depths of a military tunnel in Siberia, danger wears an identical face. A perfect copy of Kara continues her silent, brutal training. The future is looking increasingly grim. The world reacts with outrage and fear to the presidential revelation. Relentless protests surround the White House, forcing Marsden to make the difficult decision to resign from the nation's highest office. At the DEO, a cloud of uncertainty threatens to spread, but Alex remains a pillar of strength. She demands her agents' attention and reminds them that their oath is to serve and protect all people, regardless of their stellar origin. In divided communities, fear often speaks louder than reason. In National City's underworld, Mercy Graves capitalizes on the chaos. She delivers a stolen vial of kryptonite to the enigmatic Agent Liberty, actively fueling a crusade of hate against off-world beings. Meanwhile, John dives into the city's shadows, desperately searching for the whereabouts of Fiona, one of his companions from the support group. His solitary investigations lead to dead ends, and the coldness of the world around him only deepens his isolation and suspicions that something terrible has happened. Seeking to further destabilize the alien community, Mercy hacks L-Corp's systems to sabotage the image inducers that allow peaceful beings to walk the streets anonymously. Kara and Lena join forces in the labs, fighting for technical and physical survival until Supergirl manages to incapacitate the terrorist. Confined in a DEO cell, Mercy seems defeated, but her true plan was already in motion. In difficult times, true courage requires no superpowers. At Catco, Nia, a rookie journalist, uses her own moving experience as a transgender woman to inspire James to champion tolerance before the entire staff. However, intolerance finds fertile ground in the most vulnerable hearts. Mercy manipulates the insecurities of Jensen, a DO agent, poisoning him with anti-alien rhetoric. Blinded by the illusion of patriotism, Jensen frees the Graves siblings. Loose on the streets, the trio activates a machine that atomizes kryptonite into the atmosphere, turning the very air into poison. Flying through the city, Kara loses her strength instantly. Her eyes close, and the heroine plunges in a freefall toward the unforgiving concrete. The DEO sirens wail in unison, signaling a state of absolute terror. National City's atmosphere has become an invisible death row for the Girl of Steel. Tearing through the poisoned air, John lunges and catches Kara's limp body fractions of a second before a fatal impact. He carries her desperately to the DEO, where she is bathed in intense yellow solar radiation in the medical wing. However, life is slow to respond to the treatment. The root of this lethal tragedy was not born overnight. Years earlier, Ben Lockwood was just a university professor and a compassionate father trying to balance the books and protect his family. But during the devastating Daxamite invasion that swept the city, his reality was reduced to rubble. In the crossfire between heroes and invaders, the roof of his home collapsed. Looking for compassion and stability, he found only closed doors. Lena Luthor fired him for his late father's bigoted rhetoric, and James Olsen refused to listen to his pleas to highlight the suffering of ordinary human citizens. The final blow to his humanity came with the brutal attack of the World Killers. Consumed by financial ruin, loneliness, and the loss of his life's work, Ben's father surrendered to tragedy, letting himself be crushed by the debris of the family factory. A son's pain often finds lethal refuge in rage. Blaming the aliens and the elite heroes who, according to him, ruled the skies without consequence, Ben transformed his grief into a war cry. Mercy Graves saw the potential in this despair. She offered him weapons, resources, and a sacrificial target, Fiona. At Mercy's hands, Agent Liberty was forged in blood and vengeance. In the present, hope at the DEO hangs by a thread. Sunlight proves useless against the saturation of the atmosphere. Forced to seek a mechanical miracle, Alex calls upon Lena Luthor. Setting aside recent friction, Lena brings an advanced prototype, an impenetrable envirosuit developed exclusively to contain radiation. It is the last fragile barrier keeping Kara's heart beating. As they fight to purify the planet's lungs, the horizon darkens further. Seized by a distorted devotion, Jensen crosses the line of treason, promising the extremists absolute and fatal access to the heart of the DEO. Trapped inside a lead-lined hazard suit that forces her heart to keep beating, Kara struggles in suffocating silence. Outside, John is consumed by guilt, blaming himself for failing to protect his friend when she needed him most. But grief must give way to action. Encouraged by Alex, John realizes he can still fight using his mind, even from away from the front lines. Meanwhile, Agent Liberty and the Graves siblings press on with their crusade of hate. Utilizing stolen government technology, they enslave the minds of alien prisoners, turning vulnerable victims into weapons of mass destruction. The city's social fabric begins to unravel. In the shadows of this war, Manchester Black emerges. Driven by a desperate quest to find his fiancée, Fiona, his path crosses with John's. Their shared pain binds the two men in a frantic search. At the lab, time is the ultimate enemy. Brainiac 5 is moved to tears by his own perceived impotence, but Lena Luthor refuses to accept defeat. Together, they reconfigure cutting-edge nanobots, betting everything on a mechanical miracle to purify the poisoned atmosphere. The true battle erupts at the city park. Under the extremists' mind control, a final alien is forced to attack innocents. Kara throws herself into the fray, but her armor begins to fail. The end seems imminent. At the last second, Lena's nanobots clear the air and Kara can finally breathe again without her mask. The alien regains control and fires upon the Graves. However, victory tastes bitter and tragic. Fiona, gravely injured during her captivity, dies in Manchester's arms. A soul is shattered, and a dark fury is born from its ashes. Back at the DEO, a new obstacle arises. Colonel Haley takes military command of the organization. In the city's dark alleys, Manchester Black begins stockpiling heavy weaponry. His grief has just transformed into a lethal promise of vengeance. The threat shifts shape, but the cruelty remains intact. Agent Jensen, now a host for a parasite implanted by Lockwood, wanders the streets in agony. The creature demands sacrifices. In a brutal act, Jensen absorbs a meta-alien's abilities, snuffing out the victim's life and escaping with new powers. The Predator is loose. At the DEO, Alex tries to maintain order under the implacable supervision of Colonel Haley, who orders Kara to stay out of the fight. Bureaucracy begins to weaken the city's defenses. The hatred isn't limited to physical combat. The people of National City spew venom in online comments, threatening any voice that defends aliens. Prejudice has become a silent, highly contagious disease. Seeking information, John and Kara discover that a peaceful cosmic healer named Amadei is dying. The talisman that sustained his life force was stolen by his own ex-wife and sold on the dark web to the extremists. The amulet now rests with Jensen, allowing him to accumulate the powers of multiple victims without losing his mind. The final confrontation against the traitor carries a heavy price. Trapped under a DEO containment dome, Jensen faces Kara and Alex. Torn between duty and desperation, Alex begs her former colleague to surrender. Jensen's response is a brutal sacrifice. He tears the amulet from his own chest and collapses, his brain irreversibly destroyed by the overload. Amadei is restored to life and gains a second chance with his daughter, proving that not all is lost. However, the true shadow hides within the leadership itself. In confidence, Colonel Haley reveals to Alex her strong affiliation with the anti-alien movement and how she orchestrated John's downfall. The entire system is corrupted. Determined to destroy this network of hate from the inside, James dives into the shadows and reaches out to Lockwood. The board is set for a fatal game. The streets have become a hunting ground. Men hidden behind golden masks attack innocents simply for the crime of existing on Earth, but they find resistance. Manchester Black is no longer fighting for justice. He hungers for blood. Kara arrives in time to prevent a massacre, but the line between protecting life and punishing aggressors begins to blur for her allies. Inside the DEO, the atmosphere is stifling. Colonel Haley strictly forbids any official investigation into the extremist movement. To save the city, Alex and Brainy take the ultimate risk, operating in the shadows and defying direct orders. Tensions reach a breaking point during what should have been a peaceful Thanksgiving dinner. The moment of unity shatters into panic. James, acting as an informant within Lockwood's militia, deciphers the extremists' repulsive method. Dogs were used to mark alien homes in a coordinated strike. The killing spree isn't an isolated event, it's an orchestrated purge. The team abandons the table to race against the clock. Terror has already invaded the suburbs. Terrified families fight for survival. The desperation peaks when a young girl's small pet transforms into a massive dragon to defend her. Supergirl intercepts the beast in the sky, taking blasts of flame to her skin until she realizes the harsh reality. The monster is only protecting the ones it loves. Empathy finally ends the battle.
Everyone's safe. Good boy.
The night leaves deep scars. Haley corners Alex in the hallways, warning her with calculated precision that she knows every step of her secret investigation. The last layer of trust has dissolved. In public, the voice of hate echoes freely. Lockwood is given his own television program to poison the masses on national TV. In the darkness, fate collapses. James is violently intercepted and thrown into an extremist van in retaliation. Far away, Manchester Black takes his final step into the abyss. The dry crack of a gunshot echoes in his apartment as he executes a prisoner, killing the last trace of his humanity. The sky sweeps over National City with a false sense of peace. In the streets, the blind war continues. Kara intercepts a lethal shot, saving Manchester Black from a masked extremist. But Manchester's soul sinks deeper into darkness. Forgiveness and justice are no longer enough for him. Away from the sunlight, James is dragged into the Children of Liberty's lair. Cornered by Agent Liberty himself, whose identity as Ben Lockwood remains hidden behind the mask, James is forced to make an impossible choice. To keep a hostage alive, he must detonate a monument celebrating the arrival of aliens in the city. Meanwhile, the limits of science demand a cruel price. Lena begins human trials for her new drug, finding in Adam, a young man marked by grief, a reflection of her own scars. They bond over their shared losses, believing that physical invulnerability might heal the pain of the soul. On the Monument Island, a perfect trap closes in. Manchester Black betrays Supergirl, luring her into a power-dampening zone. Lockwood broadcasts images of a chained and vulnerable Kara to his extremist followers. The clock ticks down. Detonator in hand, James hesitates. Seeing Kara fighting to break free, he refuses to push the button and turns against the agents. Chaos explodes. Manchester destroys the power dampeners, allowing Kara to regain her strength, while John intervenes to stop Manchester from committing another murder. Carnage is averted, but the wounds remain open. At L-Corp, Lena's triumph crumbles. Adam experiences superhuman strength for a brief 3 minutes before his body fatally gives out. In the dead of night, the pain of failure consumes those who tried to do right. A sound breaks the silence at Kara's apartment. It's John. He collapses in tears at her door, crushed by the guilt of having trusted in Manchester's lost humanity.
Manchester. He killed all of them. I'm so sorry.
Suffocating nightmares steal Nia's sleep. She sees a woman screaming, trapped in a cycle of agony. The pressure of the lie becomes unsustainable, and the young woman finally confesses her truth to Kara and Brainy. She is from Nalter, and her dreams are visions of an imminent future, a gift that is rapidly turning into a curse. Violence finds its way home. Manchester Black invades Ben Lockwood's residence, armed with a blade and fueled by hate. John attempts to soothe Manchester's fractured mind through telepathy, but the thirst for vengeance screams louder than any peaceful plea. Following her premonitions, Nia leads Kara and Brainy to a high school, walking straight into a Children of Liberty ambush. Held at gunpoint, Nia's silent courage manifests. Trusting her vision, she anticipates the shot, using the bullet to shatter her handcuffs and free her allies. The investigation puts the pieces of the puzzle together. Kara and Alex confirm what many feared. Ben Lockwood is the extremist behind the mask. The final confrontation collides inside a steel mill. Manchester forces Lockwood to don his suit, dragging him into a brutal fight. Bathed in nth metal, Kara finds herself paralyzed as the two men trade blows on the edge of the abyss. Overcoming the physical pain, she breaks free just in time to stop Lockwood's wife from falling to his death and to prevent Manchester from becoming the monster he vowed to destroy. Both end up behind steel bars. The victory soon turns to ash. At DO headquarters, the president demands that Kara reveal her secret identity to the world. She refuses to be a political weapon. Fired and stripped of her rank, Kara chooses her integrity. Far away beyond human understanding, the skies of another Earth burn, announcing the arrival of an annihilation far greater than the hatred of mere men. A hero isn't defined by a badge. Even banished from the DEO, Kara dives into danger to neutralize a bomb on a military freighter, but her stubborn loyalty infuriates Colonel Haley. A relentless witch hunt begins within the agency to uncover the woman beneath the cape. Alex, aware of the looming danger, forms a network of silence with loyal agents willing to commit treason to protect Kara. Away from Haley's lethal scrutiny, James and Lena find their way back to each other, united by a profound confession. Lena reveals her dangerous research into superpowers, and he chooses support over judgment. Investigating the freighter, Kara and a reluctant John discover a sickening truth. The government has been training Mirai, aliens with cloaking abilities, to act as invisible assassins. The horror of the project is exposed when one of the beings chooses to take its own life upon hearing Colonel Haley's name. Blood eventually stains the DEO's own doors. The vengeful aliens invade the facility. Kara intervenes and saves Haley's life, but the Colonel's gratitude is toxic. She declares that Supergirl is now government property. Protective instincts take over. Alex doesn't hesitate, delivering a devastating punch to her superior.
Your friends, your family, everyone you care about would have a target on their back.
I had to.
Desperation forces a drastic solution. John wipes Haley's memories. However, the threat of alien interrogators seeking the truth reveals a disturbing reality. Brainy calculates that the secret will never be safe unless everyone's mind is cleared. To save her sister's life, Alex makes an unthinkable sacrifice. She asks John to erase every trace of Kara's secret from her own mind. Unable to bear the sight of severing their most sacred bond, Kara leaves the room, letting her heart break in absolute silence. In Kaznia, a dark experiment spirals out of control. Kara's clone, seemingly lifeless, releases a violent electrical discharge that arcs across the globe. The bolt hits a trailer in National City, altering a shipment of illicit drugs. On the streets, those who consume the substance transform into uncontrollable beasts, forcing authorities to act. For Kara, the true pain isn't the monsters in the street, but the one inside her own home. During a game night, the chasm between her and Alex becomes unbearable. Protection came at a high price. Alex no longer remembers the intimate details of their sisterhood. The old protective instinct has been replaced by the strict coldness of Director Danvers. The sacrifice of keeping the secret has begun to erode their deepest bonds. Seeking heir, Kara travels with Nia to the young colleague's hometown. Along the way, vulnerability unites them. Nia reveals she is a trans woman and shares a heavy burden. The premonitory powers of her lineage awakened in her, not her older sister, Maeve, as everyone expected. Destiny rarely asks permission to change a life. Soon, dark visions haunt Nia. She dreams of her mother's death, and though she races against time, she arrives too late to prevent the tragedy. Before passing, the matriarch reveals a bitter truth. The gift runs in the blood and is non-transferable. Grief is quickly swallowed by chaos. The Children of Liberty, armed with the altered alien pills, crash the funeral. To save her family, Nia uses her powers openly. Instead of gratitude, she receives total rejection from Maeve, who heartlessly denies her identity. The pain of family rejection leaves scars that are hard to heal. Compassion is born from shared pain. Seeing Nia's despair by the roadside, Kara makes a bold decision and reveals she is Supergirl. A bond cemented in mutual trust forms amidst the storm. Later, Nia finds one last gift from her mother, a hero's suit. A new destiny awaits her, even as the plots in Kaznia begin to seek allies in the heart of America. Darkness finds room even in days meant for love. What seemed to be a small meteor crash during a criminal pursuit reveals itself to be something far more disturbing. An invisible force consumes Pamela, fusing her with an alien symbiote. She is reborn as Menagerie, a bloodthirsty creature. John, trying to rebuild his life in his new private investigation office, soon crosses paths with this mystery. Simultaneously, the gears of intolerance turn back to full speed. George, Ben Lockwood's son, capitalizes on the terror, inciting the children of liberty to hunt the threat in the streets. Fear becomes the perfect weapon to resurrect extremism. The carnage culminates at a luxurious Valentine's Day ball. Supergirl, the DEO, and the militia collide in an attempt to stop the symbiote. Menagerie's grotesque strength proves lethal. When the creature is seconds away from obliterating Kara, a new light emerges. Nia, donning the mantle of Dreamer, saves her life. However, in a coldly calculated move, George Lockwood delivers the final blow to the monster, ensuring the cameras catch everything. A manufactured triumph puts power back into the wrong hands. The media victory has a devastating and immediate effect. In Washington, yielding to the pressure driven by George's extremism, the president signs Ben Lockwood's release. The terrorist smiles as he walks toward freedom. Meanwhile, in the country's deepest hideouts, the bonds that should protect begin to fray. Lena Luthor, isolated in her own ethical dilemmas, answers an untraceable call, agreeing to an unscrupulous alliance. Far away, imprisoned and silenced, Menagerie holds a letter sent by Manchester Black. Behind iron bars, the symbiote waits, knowing the chains are only temporary. The weight of helplessness breaks Kara's spirit. Ben Lockwood is free, spreading a false benevolent narrative to thunderous public applause. Exhausted, Supergirl fights a system that seems to actively reward cruelty. Old enemies arm themselves for new confrontations. No prison is impenetrable when hate demands passage. A mysterious alien in a top hat bypasses prison security, immobilizes John, and frees the ruthless Manchester Black.
Don't do this. Thanks for the chat, mate. Cheered me right up.
Teaming up with the terrifying Menagerie, they form the Elite, a brutal squad thirsty for retributive blood against the children of liberty. Without limits or mercy, they film their massacres. The line between the pursuit of justice and homicide vanishes completely. The escalation of terror takes Kara to England, pleading for a truce. Manchester scoffs at the request and, worse, exposes a shocking institutional betrayal. The US government has forged a genocidal satellite designed to pulverize alien spacecraft the moment they enter the atmosphere. Danger doesn't just dwell in the shadows. It sits at the White House table. Determined to prevent a stellar bloodbath, Supergirl tries to recruit Alex. But her sister's brainwashing, combined with her cold devotion to Colonel Haley, blocks any help. The lone guardian will have to act without the shield of her lineage. At the launch site, the battle reaches a chaotic peak. The Elite hacks the systems, not to stop the military strike, but to reconfigure it, aiming the cosmic laser directly at the US government headquarters. At the last second, Alex's buried instincts overcome the mental barrier, and she joins the heroic resistance. Kara rewrites the ballistic path and pulverizes the satellite in the dark reaches of space, saving as many lives as there were shattered dreams. However, Kara's good intentions come with an extortionate interest. Feeling challenged by the hero, the president promotes a lethal alliance. He appoints Ben Lockwood as the official director of alien affairs. In response, old certainties crack irreparably. Alex, betrayed by the colonel's secrets, seeks technological refuge with Lena. Meanwhile, James cannot turn a blind eye after so many contradictions and decides to reopen dark files involving L-Corp, declaring war in a place once governed only by affection. The Elite moves forward arrogantly on another mission, but overconfidence takes its toll. Lured into a meticulous trap, the villainous Menagerie is captured by John, Supergirl, and Dreamer. Turning her over to the DEO brings brief relief, especially for Alex, who now faces the bitter mission of acting as Ben Lockwood's bodyguard.
And the president knows it. If you've got an issue doing your job, you need to take it up with him.
Kara, however, reminds her sister that the duty to protect doesn't pick sides. To her, true justice means keeping everyone safe, even those who spread hate. Meanwhile, Lockwood uses his new political power to announce a terrifying plan: the revocation of amnesty and the mass deportation of all aliens. The icy declaration forces the extraterrestrial community to organize a peaceful protest, silently orchestrated by Brainy. Growing tension erodes John. He confesses to Kara that Manchester Black's relentless cruelty is pushing him dangerously close to losing control. The hunt for Black leads the heroes to the Fortress of Solitude, where the villain seemingly perishes in a terrifying solar explosion. But in a war of shadows, death is rarely what it seems. On the day of Lockwood's rally, hate takes over the city's streets. Kara makes a profound choice. Descending from the skies, she joins the peaceful march, not as an unreachable hero, but simply as Kara Zor-El, a resident of Earth. When Manchester Black miraculously returns to sow chaos, humanity finally fights back. Ordinary people risk their lives to protect their alien neighbors, and their courage is captured by James Olsen's vigilant lens. A thread of hope emerges, small but powerful. However, victories in this world demand a high price. As he leaves the Catco building, a sudden gunshot echoes in the darkness, taking James down and leaving his fate hanging by a thread. The line between peace and tragedy remains agonizingly thin. Lex Luthor returns, sick and on the verge of death, riddled with cancer caused by kryptonite. He is placed under the care of Lena, whose experimental cure is his only lifeline. Meanwhile, a cowardly shot leaves James Olsen bleeding on the office floor, the bullet lodged in his spine, throwing everyone around him into despair. John, drowned in grief and rage, abandons his vow of peace and begins hunting Manchester Black with brutal determination. At the hospital, Kelly, suspicious of the Luthors, chooses a risky surgery for her brother, but Manchester's attack on the dam knocks out the city's power, and James's life support machines stop. With no other choice, Kelly relents. Lena administers the glowing serum, and James breathes again, his body healing visibly before their eyes. Far away, John pushes past his moral limits and finally subdues Manchester, aware that he has crossed a line from which he cannot return. He admits to Kara that the man of peace has died, and she promises to stand by him no matter what. At the Luthor mansion, the hidden board is revealed.
Image inducers. I have to say, I was skeptical, but they really do come in handy.
Every piece of tragedy, including the shooting of James, was moved by Lex to force Lena to complete the cure. Betrayed by Eve and cornered by the return of Otis, Lena watches the final twist. Cured and armed, Lex takes flight to face a stunned Supergirl in the sky, the Master of Shadows finally taking center stage. In the skies, Supergirl collides with Lex Luthor, now encased in an advanced suit and endowed with superhuman powers. The fight exposes the sheer scale of his web. 3 years in prison served as a front to plant Eve as a spy at Catco, fuel Ben Lockwood's extremism, and above all, shape his ultimate weapon, a Kryptonian duplicate. In Frozen Cosnia, a disoriented copy of Supergirl fell into the hands of the military, and Lex, posing as a benevolent mentor, rewrote her mind. He fed the Red Daughter lies, presented Kara as a tyrant, forced her to study the hero's journals, and when compassion threatened to bloom after she saved a boy, he ordered missiles to destroy the child's home. In his cruelest scheme, he poisoned himself in the past to force Lena to perfect the Heronel serum. In the present, he travels to the Cosnian base, uses his new cured blood to resurrect the Red Daughter, and welcomes her, strengthened and devoted under his total influence. Kara now faces a mirror forged in pure darkness. The DO raids L-Corp, finding Lena waking up next to a spiteful poison pen letter from Lex, while Alex is blindsided by the confirmation of Eve's betrayal. With no leads on Lex, Kara pushes John to his telepathic limit. He falls from the sky, saved only by the Girl of Steel's lightning-fast reflexes.
John, are you okay?
Recognizing his own limitations, John decides to seek guidance from his father's spirit. At the hospital, James is discharged, but carries the invisible scars of the serum, trauma and phantom pains that begin to alienate him from Kelly. Lena visits Lillian in prison and hears the bitter truth. If Kara and Alex learn she cured Lex, their friendship won't survive. Consumed by guilt, Lena chooses action. Alongside Alex and Kara, she tracks Eve and discovers she used the formula to cure a relative and grant her powers, leading them to a clandestine military lab. Tensions boil over when Kara finds dangerous samples and confronts Lena, but the hero's sheer exhaustion leads to a sincere apology and a fragile truce. At the DEO, the invisible threads are unraveled. Lex orchestrated every disaster, including the shooting of James. In Washington, extremists revoke alien protections. Kara flies to the White House but falls into a trap set by her Kasnian clone. The ensuing political chaos transforms Supergirl into public enemy number 1. Hunted, she retreats into the shadows, while Lena and Alex reactivate an old signal watch, a small glimmer of hope in dark times. With a military curfew in effect, the city's greatest defender is hunted by the very people she vowed to protect. Despite the danger, Kara refuses to ignore cries for help, even as she faces gunfire from terrified citizens. To expose Lex, Lena and Kara infiltrate his old prison cell and find coded messages that unlock his actual journals. Page after page of sheer cruelty. Ben Lockwood seizes the DO's arsenal, preparing the perfect ambush for the fugitive hero, while Alex tries to subvert the orders from the inside. A tearful Brainy deletes refugee transport logs to save them from a massacre. In therapy, James releases bursts of black energy. His internal pain is manifesting as physical power. Deep within the prison, Otis, now encased in kryptonite-enhanced armor, nearly crushes Supergirl. She disguises herself as a civilian to escape, navigating secret corridors with Lena until they are cornered. Showing no mercy, Lex remotely assassinates Otis, incinerating him inside his own suit.
What?
At the Tactical Center, Lockwood orders the signal to hunt Supergirl to be activated, but Colonel Haley, in a final moment of conscience, sends a false alert, warning the hero to stay hidden. Militias raid homes, dragging alien families away in the dead of night. Dreamer fights the violence in the streets, and even George, Lockwood's son, begins to see the humanity behind the fear he was taught to hate. At L-Corp, Kelly and Brainy lead James into a deep trance to confront the source of his powers, the childhood trauma of his father's funeral, and the bullying that trapped him in a box of fear. Guided by his sister, he finally breaks the chains of his past. Exhausted, Kara pushes Dreamer into the spotlight for a live broadcast. Nia reveals her true self to the nation, affirming her identity and the power of a found family. The message shakes the foundation of the extremist movement, drawing Lockwood out of his office to lead a crackdown at the news station. Alex and a group of journalists form a human shield, and James, now in control of his powers, stops Lockwood through the strength of his conviction. In the aftermath, Kara and Lena finally begin to heal the wounds of betrayal. Together, they decode data pointing toward Kasnia. However, the cycle of hatred takes a toll. A man devastated by loss assassinates Lockwood's wife. On Mars, John releases his burdens into the orange sands, finally finding peace. En route to Kasnia, Lena's jet is struck by purple lightning. Kara secretly saves the aircraft and feigns unconsciousness, certain it was no accident. At an abandoned base, they discover the horrors of Lex's experiments on alien prisoners, and Eve reveals her unwavering loyalty to the villain. In National City, a grieving Lockwood injects himself with the raw serum, crossing the point of no return, and losing his son, who blames him for destroying their family. Alex struggles with the loss of her dream to adopt, and Kelly shares her own scars to support her. Back from the Kasnian hellscape after surviving lethal Eve clones, Karen nearly confesses her identity to Lena. She pulls back, however, when Lena calls her the only person she can still trust. Back home, Kara attempts to bring evidence of Lex's crimes to the president. Unaware that corruption has already reached the Oval Office, a hooded figure emerges from the darkness and drags her away.
Warn you as soon as possible.
You did the right thing.
Fragments of memory haunt Alex, a cliff, a fall, a crack of thunder, while Kara wakes up as a prisoner of her own government. During her escape, she runs into her double, the Red Daughter, armed with kryptonite and sheer contempt. Though wounded, Kara overpowers her and crashes through the glass to freedom. Elsewhere, Lena turns to her mother. Using a truth parasite on Lillian, she extracts the formula needed to neutralize the serum's effects. In the Children of Liberty's custody, Brainy is tortured. To survive, he reboots his system, inhibiting his empathy and reverting to a cold, lethal version of himself. The decisive duel takes place in Midvale. The Red Daughter holds Eliza hostage, and an electric clash tears through the night. Every shock against Kara sparks a memory in Alex's mind, until the wall finally collapses. She remembers everything, every smile, every flight with her sister. The clone leaves an agonizing Kara on the grass. Desperate, Alex implores the light of nature to save her, and in a miraculous breath, Kara's heart beats again. The relief is short-lived. On TV, city, the president hails Lex Luthor as a savior, displaying the body of the false Supergirl as a trophy. Lex executes his master plan using his favorite currency, betrayal. After staging a fake attack, he guns down the Red Daughter and turns her into a living battery. Kara releases an explosive testimony to the world, but the real war is at Shelly Island, a macabre factory using alien prisoners to power an orbital claymore aimed at Argo City. Discarded by Lex and suffering from serum withdrawal, Lockwood crosses paths with the heroes. John, Nia, and a returning Brainy risk everything to overload the core and free the captives. Lex arrives in his Lexo suit and fires kryptonite into the hero's heart, but the Red Daughter, finally understanding who truly protects the oppressed, throws herself in front of the blast. With her dying breath, she transfers her energy to Kara. Empowered, Supergirl destroys the villain's armor. Lex chooses to fall rather than face humiliation. Wounded and cornered, he finds Lena, who, weary of his manipulations, pulls the trigger and ends his tyranny. But the final blow is poisoned. A video revealing Kara is Supergirl. Lena's trust shatters. While the city celebrates deposed presidents and liberated lives, Lena smashes a photo of her friends in her empty office. In the shadows, new enemies target John, and dark forces surround Lex's body. The game continues. In the cold chill of a simulation, Lena annihilates Supergirl without hesitation, not to kill, but to mirror the pain of the betrayal she carries. Outside, Obsidian North plunges the city into virtual realities. Even with a Pulitzer for taking down Lex, Kara feels more alone than ever. Andrea Rojas takes over Catco after Lena sells the company, turning journalism into metrics and rigid contracts. The ideal of a free press becomes mere merchandise. At the museum, an alien force steals Superman's ship and releases Midnight, a link to John's forgotten past. During the awards ceremony, the weight of the lie crushes Kara. She reveals her identity to Lena, who embraces her with calculated sweetness while fueling her own project for global mind control. When Midnight tears through space with a black hole, Kara emerges in a new suit and saves John. Watching from a distance, the Martian's long-lost brother takes note. In the city's darkest corners, Eve is captured and dragged into an even more ruthless game. As the city gets lost in a technological haze, John is struck down by ancient mental pain. A brother erased from his history has returned for a reckoning. In her lab, Lena crosses the line between healing and dominating, determined to reprogram human nature to eliminate the capacity to hurt. To do this, she imprisons Eve and turns her into a test subject, implanting an AI into her brain and erasing her humanity. To save John, Kelly dives into his mind and discovers that the past didn't disappear. It was stolen. In the sewers, the truth floods John. He was the one who condemned his brother to the Phantom Zone. The memory heals his pain but intensifies the hatred of the fugitive Martian. Malefic turns trust into a weapon, taking Kelly's form to extract secrets from Alex. But love is in the details. Alex senses the fake, fires, and Supergirl saves the real Kelly. The trauma brings them closer. Meanwhile, Eve's shell breeds, but what lives inside is the cold entity created by Lena. An assassin transforms tattoos into deadly spiders and devours a billionaire in a nightclub, sparking a series of crimes that overwhelm Catco. Kara, desperate to believe, wants to think her friendship with Lena survived the truth. She is manipulated into stealing Lex's journals when Lena's mind control research hits a wall. In the depths of memory, with Nia's help, John discovers the most painful wound. It wasn't his father who erased Malefic, it was John himself. The hunt for the assassin culminates at the hospital, where Supergirl and Alex corner her, but a mysterious enforcer eliminates the mercenary before she can confess. Malefic, using the face of an old friend, tries to capture Kelly at work. The attack fails but leaves an alarming mark. Kelly can now see his true form, regardless of his disguise. She becomes the primary target. James takes her to a safe house, using the very devices Kara unknowingly delivered to Lena's enemies. In the silence of the lab, Lena and her AI crack Lex's code. The keys to subjugating minds are finally in her hands. Following the failed attempt to stop Malefic, paranoia grips the DEO. Alex vents her frustration on Brainy, while John sinks into his own guilt. Meanwhile, Kara travels to Mexico and discovers that Elena Torres's death was faked. William is not what he seems. He is undercover, trying to take down the Rojas family. Trusting him is a leap of faith. In Calvintown, James and Kelly face a city corrupted by a prison system that profits from misery. James decides to hang up the shield and buy the local newspaper. The battle will now be fought with words and hope Real danger hits the heart of the group when Malefic kidnaps Alex and poisons her mind, forcing her to target John at the planetarium. Kelly intervenes, and a Phantom Zone beam hits the Martian, but the device had been tampered with. Instead of exile, Malefic wakes up in Lena's lab, becoming her dark new ally. Andrea Rojas is in a race against time, 3 days away from Obsidian's biggest launch. Kara and William join forces, and deep in the archives, William exposes his wound, the loss of Russell Rogers to a conspiracy larger than himself. In New Mexico, Supergirl battles Rip Roar, only to find Russell under the mask. The revelation is heavy, and Kara is forced to deliver the worst news to the only man who is trying to trust her. In Lena's lab, Malefic is carefully manipulated under the veneer of science. She promises him revenge against John while actually feeding her own ends. Rip Roar's plan culminates in Antarctica, a geyser designed to collapse the planet's coasts. Supergirl and John work together to freeze the apocalypse and save billions. In her limousine, Andrea barely breathes a sigh of relief when Leviathan emerges from the shadows, a warning that the real masters of the game have stepped out of the dark. A broken Rip Roar lies in the DEO when Akrata bypasses the defenses to execute him. Under the mask, Andrea is being suffocated by masters who do not forgive mistakes. Desperate, she seeks out Lena, an old wounded friend, to ask for help. 15 years ago, the two neglected teenagers formed a bond that ambition eventually shattered. To save her father's empire, Andrea made a dark pact and stole the medallion of Akrata before Lena could use it. She saved the legacy, but shackled her soul. The price was Russell. Forced to watch his transformation into Rip Roar, Andrea lost her last guiding light. In the present, Lena, guided only by her own compass, takes control of the DEO, using Andrea's feelings and Russell's life as leverage to seize the medallion. In the end, Leviathan executes Russell without hesitation. In the lab, Lena translates the relic's inscription, a single word, Leviathan. The real war begins now. John and Supergirl try to prepare for an invisible enemy, but John's body buckles under visions of Malefic. Leviathan knocks on Lena's door, demanding the medallion. She refuses, calculating that Supergirl will eventually come to save her. Using the excuse of stopping Ramakan, Lena convinces Kara to take her to the Fortress of Solitude, lowering the site's defenses. In National City, Rip Roar, operating as a human bomb, nearly kills Alex and Brainy. Guided by his father, John finds Malefic and opens his mind, exposing his regrets and asking for forgiveness. An embrace seals their reconciliation, but at the fortress, the mask falls. After the confrontation with Ramakan, Kara catches Lena stealing Myriad. With ice in her eyes, Lena confesses she orchestrated everything, reveals she always knew who Supergirl was, and locks Kara in a crystalline prison. The friendship shatters like glass. Alex and Brainy free Kara from her cold cell, but there is no time to heal. Lena and Hope race to activate Myriad and impose their version of peace upon the world. Kara chooses to believe in her friend's humanity and tries to save her without hatred. Meanwhile, Ramakan rises to trigger a supervolcano and fulfill Leviathan's extermination order. Andrea, crushed by guilt, is dragged along as a pawn in this genocide. At the DEO, John and a redeemed Malefic provide telepathic waves to neutralize Myriad. A torn Alex prepares a lethal failsafe in case she must stop Lena at any cost. The Earth shakes. Supergirl and John face Ramakan. Alex deactivates her inhibitors so Malefic can block the Myriad signal. Lena's plan crumbles before her eyes and Ramakan flees, taking Andrea with him. As the dust settles, John sends Malefic to Mars as a herald of peace. The Monitor appears, declaring that John has passed his trial. Somewhere beyond, Lex Luthor moves pieces with the Monitor itself, aiming at a prime target, his sister. After the crisis, the multiverse is reborn as Earth Prime. In this new reality, Lex is celebrated as a philanthropist and shares control of the DEO with Lena and Supergirl. Propaganda praises the man who always sought to destroy. Trying to fix the past, Kara seeks out Lena to reveal her identity again, but Lex has cheated fate. He ensured Lena kept her memories of the erased Earth. Nothing has changed. The wound remains open. At the same time, multiple versions of Brainiac 5 appear, survivors of lost worlds. One of them, in despair, plans to release his bottled planet into the city, a catastrophic act. To stop this collapse and survive Lex, The real Brainy makes the ultimate sacrifice. He removes his personality inhibitors, coldly breaks up with Nia, and secretly allies with Lex to bring down Leviathan. Lex's smirk announces the next riddle: the criminal record of a man identical to Wynn shot. A prison bus flips, and from the wreckage emerges Wynn's criminal doppelganger, a pawn planted by Brainy in a heartless game. Lex celebrates and tightens the screws. In exchange for crucial data, Lena will feign regret to get close to Andrea and extract Leviathan's secrets. At a toy convention, explosive monkeys sow chaos, but the imposter's shot is intercepted by the real Wynn, returned from the future to clear his name and protect his family. Memories of the lost Earth flood Wynn at John's hideout, while his double stages a lethal spectacle at the university with robotic tigers. Using dream magic learned in the future, Wynn raises a force field and survives the blast. The doppelganger disappears in the flames, but he is not gone.
Toy Man is eternal.
Later, Brainy confesses to Wynn the weight of his alliance with Lex. To save tomorrow, he must betray today. And in the cold glow of a forgotten screen, the doppelganger's consciousness finds a way to beat death. Karaoke night falls apart as Alex starts monitoring Lex's every move within the DEO. The mogul notices and orders Brainy to eliminate the problem. The alien's calculated loyalty bleeds a little more. The danger takes a digital form. The alternate Wynn's mind survives and invades the DEO servers, turning the base into a death trap. His goal is to dominate the global network and weaponize technology, while Lex uses his Leviathan contacts to push Andrea into Lena's arms and solidify the project to rewrite minds. Supergirl and Wynn dive into the heart of the system to insert a kill code. The ghost of Wynn's criminal father appears on the screens, reopening old wounds. Supergirl is surrounded by kryptonite drones. Wynn must choose to trust the sacrifice of the spirit that hurt him most. He accepts, activates the code, and erases the killer algorithm forever. Fed up with the manipulations dominating the DEO, Alex resigns. In the vacuum, Brainy hands Lex restricted codes and assumes the directorship, alone in the dark. Back at her apartment, Kara's hand is barely on the doorknob when a mystical presence from the past knocks, ready to touch wounds that still burn. Mr. Mxspitlik returns not as an enemy, but as a penitent, offering Kara the chance to rewrite her past with Lena.
I am offering you a do-over. I could send you back in time. Wouldn't you like to be able to tell Lena the truth?
The temptation leads her through alternate timelines, and each revelation comes with a price. In the first, she shares her secret during the early L-Corp days. Without Lena there to intervene in a chemical attack, Supergirl dies from kryptonite. That reality is undone. In another, during the terror of the World Killers, the confession only worsens the grief. Lena rejects the alliance, is killed, and Monel takes revenge in blood. In yet another, the truth told the moment they meet draws anti-alien hatred. Innocents are burned to force the hero out of the shadows. In the darkest scenario, Kara never meets Lena, and the city falls under the tyranny of a kryptonite-armored Luthor. Exhausted, Kara understands there is no magic capable of healing pain without a cost. Back in the present, she faces Lena with harsh honesty. She owns her lies but refuses to live as a prisoner of someone else's resentment. She draws a line. If Lena crosses into the darkness, she will be treated like any other enemy. The hope of reconciliation fades, leaving only raw reality and the price that comes with it. Outside the DEO, Alex stumbles through the void left by Lex and tries to find her footing alongside Kelly, Kara, and Nia. The city is buzzing with the launch of Obsidian North's VR lenses when Andrea Rojas is ambushed. The elevator plunges under a mysterious purple energy, and only Supergirl's intervention prevents tragedy. Despite being shaken, Andrea insists on moving forward for her father's legacy. Away from the spotlight, Lena crosses the line. Using inmates provided by Lex, she tests her Q-waves and transforms a violent prisoner into someone docile, until the empathy exacts a deadly toll, and the subject, in excruciating pain, begs for it all to be undone. While Lex seals a deal with Gemma Cooper and forces Supergirl to protect Andrea, Kara sees the humanity in William, who risks his life for a story. The calm is short-lived. Alex and John follow new leads while facing the silence of Brainy, who distances himself to maintain his cover under Lex. The trail leads them to Amy Sapphire, a widow devastated by her husband's addiction to the lenses, who takes Katko hostage hostage. Supergirl wins through compassion, not force. In the end, John presents Alex with a Martian shape-shifting weapon, Kara accepts a date with William, and the curtain falls to reveal the real play. The attack on Andrea was a distraction for Lex to infiltrate the heart of Leviathan. In the silence of a warehouse, Margot Morrison watches over suspended bodies trapped in a VR illusion. Kara attempts a normal date with William, while Nia's world crumbles. Her friend Yvette is attacked by a man obsessed with hurting Dreamer herself. Outraged by the slow police response, Nia dangerously flirts with vengeance. Meanwhile, the search for a friend's brother pushes John and Alex into the Obsidian underworld. With Kelly as their guide, Alex enters a corrupted digital Las Vegas, finding users subjected to endless pain and terror. During a confrontation, she watches Richard collapse. In the real world, his lenses glow red, and his lifeless body is taken by Margot's agents. The boundary between the game and death evaporates. Blinded by rage, Nia sets an ambush for Yvette's attacker and nearly crosses the point of no return until Supergirl pulls her back into the light at the last second.
Don't let him turn you into something you're not. Why should he get to live? If you do this, you will take a piece of his darkness and carry it with you forever.
The man is handed over to the authorities, but the shadow of what almost happened remains. Then the phone rings. Alex's mother announces that Jeremiah is dead. The city breathes on. While Richard's body joins Margot's grim collection, the darkness spreads. Grief reopens old wounds. Alex refuses to attend her father's funeral, consumed by years of abandonment, and clashes with Kara, who tries to appeal to her love for their mother. With wounds exposed, Kara leaves with John. Kelly tries to ground Alex, but she seeks refuge in alcohol and, eventually, a prototype of the lenses. Inside the simulation, she dons the mantle of Supergirl, defeats threats, and finds others lost at the system's edge, until the cracks appear. A virtual ally collapses, and in the real world, her body is taken into the darkness. William hits invisible walls investigating the disappearances, and Andrea halts the launch, demanding fixes. Meanwhile, Alex's sanity detaches from reality. Convinced she is the Girl of Steel, she tries to escape and wakes up in another simulation within the nightmare. Outside, the lenses glow with lethality. Kelly turns to Andrea to inject an avatar, teenage Alex. The echo of the past breaks the trance, and Alex wakes up. The experience rearranges her priorities. With measured steps, she goes to the funeral. Beside Kara, pride yields to forgiveness, and the sisters embrace under the weight of goodbye. In the new universe, everything is a piece on Lex's board. Eve was guided by him to assassinate Jeremiah, disguising it as heart failure. The director of the DEO dances to his tune. Leviathan serves his grand design. He wants the world, but he truly craves Lena's loyalty and Lillian's approval. Seeing Lena comfort Kara infuriates him. Lex maneuvers to oust Lena from the DEO and pushes Kara to turn to Myriad, now in Lena's possession. In a double cross, he sends his sister to the fortress to prove the hero's hypocrisy while releasing a Sun Eater. John, Supergirl, and the newly arrived M'gann fight for the solar system's survival. With their attention diverted, Lex executes his move. He sacrifices pawns, saves Leviathan's hostages, and rises as a hero in the eyes of the immortals. Kara and John are suspicious, but his good deeds bleed through. Discarding his false affection for Eve, Lex tracks secret teleportation coordinates and, smiling, aims for his enemy's most sacred sanctuary. Scientific arrogance implodes. A blackout at Stryker's Island breaks the conditioning of Lena's Q-waves. A bloody riot explodes while a satisfied Lex watches his sister's ideals collapse. In the streets, Lex's theft from the fortress arms Ramakhan with primal seismic weapons, shaking Portland to its foundations, forcing Supergirl and Nia into action and interrupting an intimate moment between John and M'gann. Far away, Alex survives a mercenary attack without her old resources and, guided by Kelly's advice, envisions a new mantle for herself. The triumph against Ramakhan was bait. Allowing himself to be handcuffed, he detonates the DEO from within, nearly kills M'gann, seizes all the kryptonite, and leaves the base in flames, with Brainy trapped by the ties of his silent deal with Lex. At night, Lena, torn by her ethical failure, knocks on Kara's door. Through tears, she admits to molding herself into a villain in the pursuit of control. Kara listens in silence. A thread of hope emerges, small but alive, an offered seat, trust returning through the cracks. The final hunt begins. Immortals intoxicated by kryptonite want Kara, but they underestimate her alliances. Magan creates Martian illusions to act as decoys. Meanwhile, billions plunge into the obsidian lenses, standing before a digital guillotine. Eve's warning forces Kara into the system to wake the population, leaving her body vulnerable. Gaimne attacks from the outside, and Andrea, manipulated by fear, is pushed to a final act, until Lena rises as a physical and moral shield. With raw appeals, she breaks Andrea's darkness and proves that bonds mended in tears surpass poisoned blades. On the Leviathan ship, Brainy faces his own abyss. He activates the gravity chamber, bottles up the immortal plague, and pays with his body, collapsing in agony. Nia's dream catches his pain and reveals that his betrayal was love in disguise. Victory attracts vultures. Lex emerges from the wreckage, seizes the vessel of immortality, and ignores Brainy's dying breath. Gaimne reveals her mechanical form in the trashed Catco lab, while Lillian smiles in the shadows. Immortality now has 3 letters, Lex. With time against them, Dreamer and the allies find a dying Brainy in the ruins of the immortal ship. Gaimne advances, but the Martians and the Girl of Steel resist the radiation. Brute force isn't enough. Brainy reveals the key, the anti-life equation, and Supergirl and Alex race to deactivate the alien tech. It is a bitter victory. Evil simply changes hands. Lex, now bathed in the essence of the ancients, plans satellites that will force the world's love and loyalty. Only Lillian prevents Lena from being washed by the same spell. At the hero's base, Andrea dons the shadows as a Krata to save her family's empire, and Brainy finally bears the truth to Nia, who forgives him. Against Lex's godlike dreams, the heroes mount a counterattack. Kara records a testament at the fortress and faces the trap that weakens the immortal villain. With Alex, now Sentinel, and Dreamer, they tear down the Luthor defenses. But before falling, Lex fires the projector, and a flash of light swallows Supergirl. To protect those left behind, Lena uses Myriad to wipe Kara's identity from the minds of Lex and Lillian. Far away, the Girl of Steel awakens in the Phantom Zone, surrounded by creatures that feed on despair. Justice tries to cage a god. On the eve of his trial, Lex rejects plea deals and demands the spotlight, confident he can twist the truth. Kara's allies bet on Silas, who once crossed the Phantom Zone for love. John's patience wears thin. The absence of his adopted daughter consumes him. Alex balances on the edge of impossible expectations. In the abyss of the Phantom Zone, Kara nearly succumbs until a shield with the House of El Crest bars death. Zor-El is alive. The reunion is a comfort, but she refuses to resign herself to fate. On Earth, Lena takes the stand to expose her brother, but Lex seduces the jury with venomous charisma. Silas's portal opens, wrongly. Instead of Kara, phantoms invade Earth. The team contains them, and the rift closes. Free, Lex savors his impunity, while Andrea and Lena face each other, united by spite. In Purgatory, Kara and Zor-El map out a plan. If only monsters can cross the void, they will have to hunt one. Hitching a ride on the monster's portal, Kara and Zor-El fall violently. Her leg breaks, and scavengers drag her father away. Salvation comes from Nixley, who, through mirrored vulnerability, regains her magic, heals Kara, and helps her rescue Zor-El. On Earth, Silas, infected, loses his humanity. The transformation drags Alex back to old traumas, and Kelly anchors her. John forbids solo missions, but Magan disobeys and is infected. Simultaneously, Lena tries to save a hospital with funding, and Lex blows it up, blaming her. She wishes for her brother's death. Brainy feels the wound, and her courage allows her to cut the toxic tie. Lena surrenders Luthor Corp to Lex. John sacrifices a fragment of himself to pull Magan back, inspiring Alex to ask Kelly to share a home and a future. In the void, Kara and Nixley destroy the Scavenger's fortress, save Zor-El, and a certainty illuminates the dark. If her mother created the Phantom Zone, an exit must exist. In the desert of the Phantom Zone, Kara, Zor-El, and Nixley find the anchor, a promise of salvation with an exit mirror shattered. Zor-El nearly breaks, but Kara keeps him moving in search of another route. A trail of hope appears. On Earth, the Phantom infection spreads. Destroying the chrysalis would cure the civilians but sever M'gann's only psychic link to Supergirl. Alex leads the impossible. She asks Lena to erase the last digital fragment of Kara's soul to create a new tracker. In the abyss, Nixley reveals her betrayal after wounding Zor-El. She intended to use Kara's despair to escape and spread chaos in the fifth dimension. The heroes, guided by Sentinel, crush the chrysalis and free Silas and others. The new tracker requires Kara's DNA in a rare cellular state, and Brainy and Nia leap into the past. In a bitter strike against Nixley, Kara destroys the last exit from her mother's prison and flees as the anchor explodes. Not every victory tastes like one.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Time is fragile. Brainy and Nia arrive in Midvale 2009, where ghosts still walk. For Nia, seeing the time when her mother is alive brings renewed grief. The mission: collect Kara's weakened DNA without altering history. But in a small town, secrets carry weight. Young Kara suffers from hiding her future from Kenny. When the ship from the future crashes into the baseball field, the travelers pose as ordinary aliens and drag the Danvers into the chaos. A young and relentless Cat Grant smells something extraordinary, and alien hunters descend to capture the Kryptonian. Kara and Nia prevent a disaster on the road, but the ripples in time increase. Brainy's hesitation exposes their hideout. The ambush is swift, and Nia and Brainy are captured. Tomorrow hangs by a thread. Kara breaks the rules and the silence. She invades the enemy base and rescues Nia and Brainy. Cat Grant, hidden, records every flash of strength with a drone. The truth is nearly exposed. At the school prom, under romantic meteors, Alex gives Kara the blessing she needs to shine without a mask. Then the universe strikes. Kryptonite-laced rocks rain down. Kara falls in the gym and falters. Scenting vulnerability, the aliens invade, demanding Supergirl. Kenny offers himself as bait, and Nia, in desperation, summons a cougar from her own nightmares to shatter the enemy line. The chains fall, and Kara's secret is exposed under Sirens and Cat's lens. To fix the timeline, Kara hides in the ship, and Nia and Brainy go back a few hours. Now they control the chaos. Nia intercepts and inspires Cat to seek a more visionary future. When the meteors arrive, Kara saves everyone again and discreetly delivers the blood samples the future needs. At dawn, she tells Kenny the truth. She is leaving. She trades teenage love for a grand and painful destiny. In the darkness of the Phantom Zone, Kara decides no rescue is worth the lives of her friends. But 2 hours earlier, the team converted the tower into a ship and launched themselves into the interdimensional abyss with no room for error. The flight goes sideways when the Prime Phantom escapes inside the ship and unleashes nightmares. Lena sees her mother drowning again, childhood guilt, but faces the illusion with logic and breaks it. Nia fails to foresee the chaos, and the containment fails. To ensure the mission continues and her sister lives, Alex sacrifices herself, opening the hatch and offering herself to the vacuum to draw away the phantoms. At the same moment, Zor-El reaches Kara with familiar warmth and reminds her who she is. Love reignites the spark. Lena's solar bomb explodes in light, bathing father and daughter, and the ship intercepts the void. Kara and Alex reunite in an embrace that defies death, but eyes are watching. Nixley clings to the fuselage and hitches a ride in silence. The tower celebrates the rescue, but Kara wakes up suffocated by Phantom Zone nightmares and pretends she is whole. Zor-El, haunted by the ghost of Krypton, wants to save Earth from the same fate and creates an eco-friendly robot to incinerate ocean waste. Haste turns to catastrophe. Corrupted by hidden tech, the prototype becomes a monster and threatens to flood the coast. During the fight, Kara's suit is breached. The cold touch of ancestral fear and the specter of kryptonite paralyze her in front of everyone. With Brainy's logic and Kara's fire, the danger is neutralized, but the guilt weighs heavy. Zor-El understands. You cannot pay a debt to the dead by violating the flow of the living. He embraces his daughter, restores the humanity she thought she'd lost, and departs to face the past among the stars. While confessions free their hearts, Andrea crosses ethical lines, hungry for ratings by invading secrets once locked away by Lex, and in the dead of night, Nia wakes from a nightmare with a single name on her lips: Nixley. Nia hunts her mother through the labyrinths of dreams, but Nixley blocks her path path and promises a perfect day with her deceased mother. In exchange for total freedom from the dream realm, grief opens dangerous gaps. At the same time, Kelly faces real-world horrors. Marginalized youth, like Joey, crushed by a system that profits from private prisons and fake orphanages. She follows the trail to a director who turned reintegration into exploitation and a guardian who used power dampeners to torture alien children. The heroes dismantle the ring, and Kelly gathers evidence to bring down the entire machine. In the end, Alex places the original Guardian's helmet in her hands. A new shield is born on the streets. Exhausted and torn by her nightly absences, Nia gives in to despair and accepts Nixley's pact. The price of a broken promise begins to haunt tomorrow.
I'm in.
Memories become a dungeon. Trapped in her own mind, Nia faces her mother through scoldings and affection until she distills courage from the confrontation with pain. In the city's shadows, Nixley, exhausted and captured by a former partner, regains her freedom through manipulation and sets her deadly play. The Ormfell building, a community shelter of last resort, becomes bait for Kara. The freeze bomb seems disarmed, but Supergirl's heat releases a wave that restores all of Nixley's magic. The answer comes from the ground. Community voices invade the council demanding humanity, and a thread of hope takes hold. The villain, however, responds with cruelty. She freezes Supergirl's skin and reduces the asylum to rubble. Faced with imminent genocide, despair erodes Kara's ethics, and to stop the storm, she reaches out for dangerous magical artifacts. The invocation tears the veil. Nixley's fury stems from patriarchal betrayals that crushed her autonomy and stole her majesty. Now her focus is on gathering the dominating artifacts scattered across the cosmos, draining every drop of protective magic that hinders her. In the tower, Nia hides the guilt of having helped birth the chaos and finds refuge in friends marked by old failings. Far away, Lena follows the trail of her own lineage to a village that rejects her with ferocity. Amidst graves and whispers, she discovers she is not the product of a genetic accident, but the heir to a line of witchcraft persecuted unto death. A truth that challenges her science and demands she walk through her fear. In the field, the heroes fall into a suffocating trap. Salvation comes as a sacrifice. An ancient force of magical chaos offers itself as a shield, vanishes imprisoned by Nixley, and before the end, leaves an inhibition carved into the tyrant's venom. Confined without full life force, Nixley retreats, hungry for the final divine spark. The neighborhood of the Heights is bleeding. Ill-equipped clinics and broken homes crush the unseen, while suits profit and authorities flirt with poisoned miracle reinforcements. Lives are extinguished in silence, and the coldness of power ignores the crying on the sidewalks. Kelly, in fury and love, confronts a bitter truth. Heroes saved worlds but left their own people voiceless. She rips the blindfolds off her friends, demands accountability, and, with an ally seasoned by old pains, finds the right tone for change. Donning the Guardian legacy, Kelly takes the fight to the pavement. She organizes, protects, exposes corruption, and gives breath back to those on the brink. Her strength doesn't target gods, it lifts the fallen. The dull thud of her arrival opens an artery of hope in the streets. A call for a revolution of stubbornly living humanity, far from alien glories and close to the city's wounded heart. At the fortress, Kara and Lena find warnings from a Kryptonian witch. Totems demand trials that shape the soul. Soon the totem of courage emerges, and the hunt leads Supergirl and Nixley to a museum. The heat vision cracks the artifact, and the city is flooded with chaotic courage. To contain the disaster, each must face her ghost. Kara relives the night she sacrificed anonymity to save a plane. Her compassion breaks the rules of the test and causes her to fail. Nixley faces her brother's rebellion and, instead of blood, offers vulnerability. Admitted pain becomes strength, and she wins the trial. A magical storm threatens National City. To save innocence, Kara makes the painful decision to surrender her half of the totem to the enemy. The city breathes, and an invisible bond is born. A telepathic link joins the minds of heroine and tyrant, sharing pains and secrets. In the tower, Lena accepts her mother's legacy, while Nixley discovers that true power always exacts a tribute. The calm shatters with the appearance of the humanity totem. In Nixley's hands, the relic infects minds, twisting compassion into pure anarchy. The streets are set ablaze. Far from the riot, Esme, a newly fostered alien girl, struggles to find her place in the world. When fear strikes, her cries unleash flames that scare off her attacker, but also alienate the family that locks her out.
I told you, I don't know how I did it. It was an accident.
Just be
a big girl. You can have some ice cream later, okay? Keep us safe.
Prejudice leaves her shivering in the cold. At the epicenter of the chaos, Lena chooses magical intuition over scientific precision. Instead of attacking, she dives into the heart of the totem, flooding Nixley's mind with an ocean of empathy. Accustomed to isolation, the villain drowns in the suffering of others, releasing the imprisoned minds and fleeing, leaving the artifact behind. Amidst the emotional wreckage, a home begins to bloom. Alex and Kelly find Esme alone, and, with a steadfast gaze, show the girl the true meaning of home. Esme tries to settle into the overwhelming love of Kelly and Alex, but unable to control her emotions, she begins absorbing the powers of those around her. Her small body, crushed by abilities she never asked for, yields to an old fear of being returned. However, Alex and Kelly forge an unbreakable promise. Here, no storm will ever tear them apart. Meanwhile, Nixley scents the Hope Totem, an artifact that only responds to a light more intense than the sun. To break the hero of steel, she kidnaps William and holds the world hostage, inciting generals to the brink of nuclear war. Amidst the lit fuse, Kara lands without punches or heat vision, only words. She averts the apocalypse through dialogue, disarming pride and resentment, freeing William, and passing the test of hope through her own humanity. Realizing the combined totems could extinguish all life, Kara hurls the hope fragment into the sun to destroy it. But cosmic magic does not die easily. It rearranges itself, silent and renewed. At the docks, the knight delivers a poisoned gift to Nixley, a watch that unfolds into a high-tech Lexo suit, sent by a secret admirer dedicated to absolute evil. The game changes shape and becomes far more lethal. Words that wound still sting as Nia seeks out Maeve. Haunted by old scars, the sisters decide to enter the dream realm together in search of a legendary artifact. In the waking city, Nixley's armor, guided by an artificial intelligence, rips through reality and unleashes a nightmare creature. Lena raises an energy dome to contain it, but the protection triggers a mass panic and draws military ire. Kara, squeezed between her life as a journalist and her duty as a hero, realizes that trying to be two people is consuming everything. In the Dream Forest, Maeve attempts to steal the core of Dream Power but is rejected for lacking a pure heart.
Maeve.
You are not pure, Maeve now. You are a traitor to your blood, trying to take our power for your...
The venom of long-held resentments overflows between the sisters. Nia faces Nixley head-on, but the villain escapes with the ancient prize. Despite being betrayed, Nia offers Maeve a thread of redemption. Back in reality, Kara makes a life-altering decision. She quits her job in the media and issues a public apology, vowing to protect the city from the coming storm. Far away, as Nixley attempts to repair her armor, the system flickers with a familiar face. The AI smiles with the signature of Lex Luthor, promising to architect the villain's final glory. Lex reveals he has traveled through eras and timelines to snatch Nixley from a tragic end. He calls it love. She sees only obsession and refuses him. The hero set a trap using an arcane replica to capture her, but Lex tears the plan apart, rescuing his beloved from the hands of justice. The shock of this dark pact weighs heavy on Lena's chest. What if the magic within her is merely an echo of the Luthor bloodline? Kara takes her hand, proving that family is a choice, not DNA. Away from the battlefield, Alex drafts the perfect marriage proposal, but fate pushes them into a confrontation within a ruined church. Amidst the clashing powers, the divine prize vanishes, and the failure brings a sudden clarity. There is no perfect moment. Breathless, Alex kneels right there. The yes pierces through the dust like a beacon. Gradually, Nixley gives in to Lex's calculated pragmatism and agrees to walk by his side. The night ends with smiles at home and raised glasses, ignoring a devastating truth. On Esme's neck, the mark of the love totem glows. The most dangerous of relics now lives within the hero's home. The headlines mock Lex, and the city turns his dark lyricism into a joke. Wounded, the tyrant's pride demands vengeance. Nixley faces a magical tribunal, pouring out the secrets that devour her, her thirst for revenge, and her agonizing fear of dying alone. On another front, Brainiac 5 discovers that to save his people, he must sacrifice himself, hiding his pain behind small acts of kindness. When Kara suggests concealing Esme's nature to protect her, Alex raises her voice. Her daughter will not learn to live in the shadows. Acceptance will be earned, not hidden. Night falls, and the tower seems secure. William offers to watch over Esme, but the silence has been sabotaged. Nixley invades like a whisper, convincing the girl to follow her. Before the kidnapping is complete, Lex aims at the journalist. A single gunshot cuts through the air. By the time Alex and Kelly realize the sinister puzzle etched into Esme's mark, it's too late. They find the tower stained, William lifeless on the floor, and Esme's place empty. Grief weighs like lead. William lies still, and the war claims its toll in flesh and silence. A recorded message from Lex dictates the nightmare. Esme's life in exchange for all the totems. At a bridge where powers are neutralized and only human courage remains. The team splits up. Brainy hunts for signals across the globe. Nia dives into dreams, and Alex burns through her rationality in the heat of maternal despair. In captivity, Lex suggests extracting the artifact from the child by force. Nixley stops him, and in that act of compassion, she becomes the new host of the love totem. In Prague, Kara claims the final totem, but a vision of total annihilation paralyzes her. The warning comes too late. Determined to save her daughter at any cost, Alex seizes the totems from Kara's hands. At the bridge, the exchange goes south, the relics fuse, and the dreaded Allstone is born. Explosions tear through concrete. To contain the chaos, Kara drinks in stellar energy until she eclipses the sun in broad daylight. The panic of the innocents makes her recoil. She will not pay that price. In the turmoil, the Allstone shatters into three. Kara, Lex, and Nixley each seize a fragment and collide, devouring the streets in their fury. It is then that Kara understands. The final victory will not come from brute force, but from the courage every person carries within. With her final breath, Lillian releases the chains she held over Lena. She confesses to suppressing her daughter's magic out of fear, and finally blesses her to follow her own path. Pain turns into lucidity. Accepting who she is becomes Lena's greatest sorcery. Kara, in turn, abandons the fantasy of saving the world alone. Using Lena's empathy spell connected to Brainy's telepathic technology, she speaks directly to the heart of the planet, asking everyone to summon their own hope. As humanity responds, the power slips from the hands of Nixley and Lex. Old allies arrive, the battle ignites, and in an act of desperation, Lex tears reality open to the Phantom Zone. But the Phantoms hunt fear, not bravery, and they drag the two villains into the silent darkness. Weeks later, under the Midvale sky, Alex and Kelly marry before their friends, sealing a vow of eternal protection and loyalty. The joy contrasts with the weight still pressing on Kara, a life split between disguise and truth. A call from Cat Grant is the key. To lead again, the lies must die. Bolstered by Lena's steady gaze, Kara lets her armor fall. She weeps, removes her glasses, and finally embraces her whole self. Amidst toasts and laughter, the world watches, breathless, as the revelation hits the screens. Freedom has finally found its face.